Have you ever thought about Earth itself as an intelligent, well, not creature, but maybe an entity? Like it has a mind and some survival instincts of its own. When said like this, it sounds like you're about to watch a fantasy movie where the planet we walk and live our daily lives on will suddenly wake up, realize it doesn't like us that much after all, and just go crazy. Hope not. But we're not actually talking about such scenarios. More of the idea that the collective activity of life, like microbes and plants, can change a planet and give it a life of its own. It's like the planet has a green mind. The metaphor of Earth as a living planet makes sense. Creatures across the globe crawl, swim, walk, and fly through the uppermost layers of our land, ocean, and sky. Plants cover much of our world. Plus, there are viruses and bacteria in the water, soil, and even atmosphere. Now imagine all the living things on Earth, like plants, animals, and microbes, as a giant team working together. They have different jobs, but they all do their thing to make the planet a better place to live. For example, plants make oxygen that we breathe, and animals help pollinate flowers. Together, they form the biosphere, which is like the Earth's team of life. That's where the idea of planetary intelligence comes in. Just like individuals and groups can be intelligent, so can an entire planet. Researchers believe we should measure the planet's intelligence by its ability to keep itself going forever. And just like how humans need to work together to survive, a planet's collective intelligence is measured by the capacity of all the life on it to work together towards this same goal. It's like the planet is a complex system that knows how to take care of itself. Like forests, they can share nutrients through their secret underground networks of fungi. This helps all the trees stay healthy. We can obviously learn a lot from forests. If we jump into the fantasy universe while looking for intelligent, conscious planets, we definitely choose Mogo from Green Lantern. It's a specific planetary entity that can do things like changing its weather and altering gravity, plant growth, or some other surface conditions. Or how about the stunning Pandora from Avatar? Do you remember the fascinating scenes of flora and fauna there? With organs that might remind you of tentacles. They enable creatures to interlink with each other on a neural level. It's like the entire planet is like one giant brain, with many smaller trees, creatures, and its other pieces as its cells. We're far from that, but it's still nice to imagine. At the moment, our civilization is in the stage scientists named an immature technosphere. That means we're still too focused on using technology that doesn't always do good for our planet. We don't have a planetary intelligence or a collective understanding of what needs to be done to do better for our planet. Instead, we're all just doing our own thing. I mean, we're not at the worst stage. Researchers have come up with 4 stages of Earth's past and future to explain how planetary intelligence could impact the long-term future of humanity. The first stage is what we call the immature biosphere. It's when life first started on Earth, billions of years ago. Only microbes were there on the bare land without any vegetation. There wasn't any global feedback, which means these microbes couldn't yet affect Earth, its atmosphere, or other systems in any way. The second stage is the mature biosphere, which was 2.5 billion to 540 million years ago, when stable continents formed and the biosphere started to have a strong influence on the Earth. The third stage, known as immature technosphere, is where we are now, with interlinked systems of communication, technology, transportation, electricity, and computers that draw resources from Earth's systems and affect the biosphere. The fourth stage, also known as the mature technosphere, is where Earth should aim to be in the future. It means technology will benefit the entire planet. We'll use sustainable forms of energy, like solar power. Planetary intelligence is the sign of a mature planet, and researchers are trying to figure out how we can move towards it. So, things we do on an individual level do matter. The collective activity of life, like microbes or plants, can change a planet and make it more than just a lifeless rock floating in space. Through the biosphere, our home planet kind of figured out how to host life by itself billions of years ago, and it's still going. Now we need to figure out how to have a similar kind of self-maintaining system, but this time with the technosphere. It's hard to imagine planets could generally become sentient, like Pandora or some other imaginary conscious world out there. There are a few reasons for that. First, planets form based on how different materials like rocks, gases, and liquids gather around a new star. It's like you have a big family gathering, where everyone brings different ingredients to make a delicious dish. And just like how these ingredients won't suddenly turn into a living being, the materials that make up a planet won't just turn into self-aware creatures. On Earth, after billions of years of complex chemical reactions, some molecules started to replicate themselves and carry information. That's how life on our planet began. And Earth is the only such example we have. Here's the second reason. Imagine you have a big garden where you plant a lot of mushrooms or bacteria, hoping they'll become really smart and help you take care of the garden. But mushrooms and bacteria don't have brains like we do. It's not like they need it anyway. Having a big brain is really expensive for animals too. It takes a lot of energy to keep it running. So, animals only become as smart as they need to be to survive and thrive in their environment. Dogs and cats are pretty smart because they need to be able to avoid danger and find food. They don't need human kind of intelligence for things like building houses, creating art, or inventing new technologies. So, it would be hard to bring all living beings and plants to the same level of intelligence. The third reason why it would be difficult for a planet to become sentient is the main rule of the animal kingdom. Life is all about survival of the fittest. Every creature is competing for resources like water, food, and space. But not only do different species compete against each other, but individuals within the same species also fight. Just think of how fiddler crabs fight for territory on the beach, or how wolf packs fight over prey. Or me, when I see an empty spot on a crowded beach. This kind of competition is not a good base for global cooperation. There are a couple of exceptions to this rule. For example, ants. They may not be the brightest creatures on the planet, but when they come together in colonies, they can achieve amazing things, like gathering food that's way bigger than them, building nests, raising young, and even farming. In fact, they act like a superorganism called a hive mind, where every ant works together towards a common goal. Insects like bees and ants are very altruistic and work together to ensure their queen reproduces. If one large ant colony took over our whole planet, it could act as a single mind and work towards the colony's and planet's interests until they run out of resources. But in reality, it's hard to imagine any organism, even a superorganism, could reach such a level of self-awareness and consciousness. Number 5. How could we keep in contact? When it comes to communication, ants use pheromones and humans use nerves. Both of these methods work well for small organisms, but when it comes to a giant planet-sized entity, it would be hard to make such communication fast and efficient. So, communication within a planet-sized entity would be much slower than what we have in our homes, like our computers or smartphones. Oh well, we'll just continue dreaming about Pandora.
You wake up with a start, open your eyes and look around. Oh, you're inside your sleeping capsule. Its walls are littered with different buttons and tiny screens. You press one of them, and one of the sliding panels sweeps to the side. You crawl out of your pod and start another regular day on the moon. Or maybe you open your eyes and come up to the window to have a look at the weather outside. Everything seems to be as usual: blue trees, purple sky, and low-hanging yellowish clouds. Great, you won't need your acid rain protection today. Or maybe you'll open your eyes to the dry plains of the Red Planet. You'll eat your 3D printed breakfast and set off on a trip to Olympus Mons, the largest volcano on Mars. You've been planning this climb for ages. Whatever scenario it is, one thing is glaringly clear: you're not living on Earth. Why? there might be a few reasons why people could have abandoned our beautiful green paradise. The sun might have grown too old and started to expand, burning vegetation, boiling the oceans, and leaving Earth uninhabitable. Or it was probably a collision with the Andromeda Galaxy. Yes, the one that is bound to crash into the Milky Way in about 4.5 billion years. It could have been a wandering asteroid large enough to destroy all kinds of life on our planet. Of course, these days, astronomers have their own ways of spotting such space intruders. But what if their equipment malfunctioned? It would end badly for Earth and Earthlings. A much sadder reason for us to leave our beloved planet would be our own actions and the risks we pose to it. According to statistics, these days, the onslaught of droughts, earthquakes, floods, and epic storms is triple the number from the 1980s and almost 54 times that of 1901. Climate change could lead to water shortages, a severe lack of food, and the submersion of coastal regions. If it all went too far, we'd have to conserve the planet to save at least some of its flora and fauna. Then, it would become a nature reserve the remaining people would sometimes visit. But if not on Earth, where would humanity live? Surprisingly, there are quite a few options. For example, we could dig several feet beneath the surface of the moon and build our bases there. Or the first towns on the moon might be built in craters and covered with protective materials, like plastic reinforced with a net made of titanium and UV-resistant superfiber. The inhabitants would have to access their homes through airlock entrances dug into a mound. Or we could skip the moon altogether and set off towards the moons of Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, or Neptune. Yes, they're much farther from the sun and probably way too cold for us. But on the bright side, these moons are believed to contain vast amounts of water, carbon, and nitrogen. And still, the most likely destination is Mars. Unlike the moon, which has a very, very weak atmosphere that consists of unusual gases, Mars has a bit denser atmosphere, even though it's still about 100 times less dense than the atmosphere of our home planet. In any case, it can offer us some protection against harmful space radiation. Mars also has about 40% of Earth's gravity, which is not that bad. We could probably get used to it with time. Plus, there's water ice on the red planet. The soil there contains enough carbon to grow plants. With time, the planet could be terraformed with the help of water from underground ice or imported from an ice asteroid. We'd use this water to form a thin ocean and maybe even create a breathable atmosphere. Or we could find an exoplanet that has all the resources to support life. An exoplanet is a planet outside our solar system. It would probably be much easier for us to find a world that would be perfect for us, rather than reconstruct the already existing world with its own workings.
We have found out quite a lot of things about the past of our planet, but can we figure out its future? And I mean, not guess or predict, but estimate scientifically. Before we move on to assessing the future of our planet, I suggest we define the future of our channel. Please support our work by subscribing and liking. Thank you. Well, experts think we might learn more about the future of Earth with the help of a few long-term factors. Among them, we've got the rate at which the interior of our planet is cooling, the chemistry at Earth's surface, and even the way our planet gravitationally interacts with other objects in the solar system. And don't forget that we humans also cause serious changes to our home planet. For example, take climate engineering and other technologies. Some people even believe that technology might be what will lead humanity to extinction. If it ever happens, the planet will begin to evolve naturally and much more slowly. Experts think that over periods of hundreds of millions of years, certain space invaders can lead to mass extinctions on Earth. I mean, comets and asteroids that might crash into our beautiful blue world at one point in the future. Another threat from space can be a powerful near-Earth supernova. It is a gigantic explosion, the largest in space, and it unleashes enormous amounts of energy. The temperature at the core of a supernova is often 6,000 times higher than that in the Sun's core, can reach several billion degrees F within microseconds. After that, atoms get crammed together so infinitely close that the squeezed core recoils and the star explodes, creating a superheated shock wave. If a supernova ever occurred around 30 light-years away from Earth, we'd have huge problems. An incredibly powerful blast of radiation would bring a massive influx of high-energy neutrinos. Our planet would be vaporized in just a fraction of a second. Even the shock wave would have enough force to wipe out our oceans and the entire atmosphere of our planet. Another prediction says that while the Sun is orbiting the Milky Way, stray stars may approach our solar system. They can get close enough to have a disastrous influence on our planet. Such an encounter can also lead to comets in the Oort clouds becoming more active. The Oort cloud is a region of space filled with icy celestial bodies orbiting within half a light-year away from the Sun. And if something, for example, a wandering star destabilizes this region, the number of comets reaching the inner solar system and US will likely increase 40-fold. But while scientists can't be sure about asteroid impacts or supernova explosions, they can forecast large-scale geological events. One theory claims that Earth will continue to experience glacial periods for quite some time. Also, the movement of tectonic plates will probably result in the appearance of a new supercontinent. It might happen in 250, 300 million years from now. The changes in the luminosity of the Sun, which will become brighter and brighter, will lead to an increased level of solar radiation reaching Earth. It will eventually cause a drop in the level of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere around 600 million years from now. If this tendency continues, plant life will disappear from the face of the Earth. Of course, it will also influence animal life, since plants are the base of the animal food chain on our planet. In 10 billion years or so, the luminosity of the Sun will become 10% higher than it is now. It will turn the atmosphere of the planet into a moist greenhouse. The oceans will start to evaporate. In around 2-3 billion years, the planet's magnetic field might stop functioning. 4 billion years from now, a rise in Earth's surface temperature will lead to conditions resembling present-day Venus. By that point, there won't be any life left on the planet. And finally, the Sun will most probably absorb Earth in around 7.5 billion years. It will happen after our star enters its red giant phase and expands way beyond the current orbit of our planet.
The James Webb Space Telescope, an astounding piece of equipment built to outperform the Hubble Space Telescope, has made a terrifying and amazing discovery that might completely change our perception of the universe. It has successfully detected a faint glow coming from a staggering 7 trillion miles away. Can this glow be shining city lights coming from some mysterious extraterrestrial world galaxies away from us? Well, let's start from the beginning. A few years ago, NASA's Infrared Spitzer Space Telescope helped us spot a family of 7 rocky exoplanets orbiting the same star. This star is known as TRAPPIST-1, and recently, our new infrared powerhouse, the James Webb Telescope, has measured the temperature of one of those distant worlds. It was a planet called TRAPPIST-1b. Unfortunately, it turned out that this Earth-like planet was totally uninhabitable. Astronomers took James Webb's mid-infrared camera, called MIRI, and looked at the planet's thermal emissions. We can picture the whole process as scientists using heat-sensing Terminator vision. The results were quite disappointing. TRAPPIST-1b turned out to be scorching. Its average temperature was around 450 degrees F. That's as hot as in an oven. Plus, the planet most likely doesn't have any atmosphere. At the same time, this discovery was another record-breaking first for the telescope, which had already produced some newsworthy results by that time. It was the first time researchers detected any form of light emitted by a small and relatively cool exoplanet similar to the rocky planets in our own solar system. No previous telescope had enough sensitivity to measure such dim, mid-infrared light. When 7 TRAPPIST-1 exoplanets were first discovered, the astronomical community was ecstatic. That's because all those faraway worlds were about the size of our home planet and located in their star's habitable zone. It's the region that is just the right distance away from a star for liquid water to exist on a planet's surface. Thus, the planetary system became the best place to look for rocky planets with an atmosphere. But don't get too excited yet. These planets aren't likely to become new worlds for humans to explore, mostly because the TRAPPIST-1 planets are totally out of our reach at the moment. They're just too far away, at a whopping 235 trillion miles away. Their star is also much smaller and redder than our Sun. It's classified as an M-dwarf star. In our home Milky Way galaxy, there are twice as many of such stars as there are stars like the Sun, and they're also twice as likely to have rocky planets orbiting them. It's probably not surprising that astronomers are very interested in such stars. They're the main targets for seeking potentially habitable planets, and it's also way easier and more convenient to observe rocky planets around such smaller stars. But there's a catch. M-dwarfs are more active than our Sun. They frequently flare and spew high-energy rays which are likely to be extremely damaging to planets' atmospheres and any forms of extraterrestrial life. When researchers examined TRAPPIST-1b before, their observations weren't sensitive enough to determine whether this world had an atmosphere, or if it was just a barren rock. But now, we know. The planet is tidally locked to its star, which means that one of its sides always faces the star, while the other is stuck in perpetual darkness. The latest simulations suggest that if this planet had an atmosphere, its temperatures would be much lower since the air would redistribute the heat around both sides of the planet. Unfortunately, the James Webb Telescope recorded much hotter temperatures than needed for such a favorable scenario. It indicates the absence of an atmosphere and knocks the planet off our list of possibly habitable worlds. But the main excitement here isn't actually the features of TRAPPIST-1b. The main takeaway is that James Webb is capable of making such kinds of measurements. It'll help us explore the atmospheres and temperatures of many other distant worlds.
Earth is 4.5 billion years old. Modern humans, we've only been around for about 300,000 years. So what was happening on our planet before we showed up? Was it just empty? Or could there have been other advanced civilizations that came before us? Civilizations so ancient that all traces of them have been wiped away. This is the heart of the Silurian hypothesis, a fascinating scientific thought experiment proposed in 2018 by astrophysicist Adam Frank and climate scientist Gavin Schmidt. They asked a simple but mind-blowing question. If an industrial civilization existed on Earth millions of years ago, would we even be able to tell? The hypothesis is named after the Silurian period, a time over 400 million years ago when life was thriving in Earth's oceans. But the name is also a nod to Doctor Who, where the Silurians are an ancient reptilian species. It's a clever way to frame the idea, but the science behind it is serious. So, if there were advanced civilizations before us, where are all the ruins, the tools, the skyscrapers? Well, that's the thing. Earth is a master at recycling itself. Our planet is constantly changing. Mountains rise and fall, oceans become deserts, and entire continents shift over millions of years. Processes like plate tectonics, erosion, and volcanic activity are like nature's cleanup crew. Think about it. If humanity disappeared today, how long would it take for all traces of our civilization to vanish? Scientists estimate that within a few million years, even our toughest structures, like skyscrapers and nuclear waste sites, would be ground into dust and scattered across the planet. So, if our civilization can disappear so completely, what chance do we have of finding evidence of one that existed hundreds of millions of years ago? This is where Frank and Schmidt's idea gets really interesting. Instead of looking for physical evidence, they proposed searching for chemical fingerprints in Earth's geological record. For example, carbon isotopes. Burning fossil fuels changes the ratio of carbon-12 to carbon-13. If an ancient civilization used industrial processes, we might find these anomalies in ancient rock layers. Nitrogen levels. Synthetic fertilizers could leave behind unusual amounts of nitrogen-15. Radioactive isotopes. If they used nuclear technology, we might find traces of plutonium-24 or iodine-129, elements that don't occur naturally in large amounts. But here's the catch. Natural processes can also produce similar chemical signatures. For example, massive volcanic eruptions can release huge amounts of carbon dioxide, altering isotope ratios. So, how do we tell the difference? One of the key pieces of evidence Frank and Schmidt looked at was the Paleocene-Eocene thermal maximum, PETM, a period about 56 million years ago when Earth's temperature spiked by 5 to 8 DTC. This event released a massive amount of carbon into the atmosphere, similar to what humans are doing today. Could this have been caused by an ancient industrial civilization? It's a fascinating idea, but most scientists aren't convinced. The PTM was likely caused by natural processes, like volcanic activity or the release of methane from ocean floors. Plus, the rate of carbon release during the PTM was much slower than what we see today. So, if the PETM wasn't caused by ancient factories, what other clues could point to a lost civilization? Some researchers have suggested that dinosaurs might have been more advanced than we think. Take the Troodon, for example. This small bird-like dinosaur had a large brain relative to its body size, binocular vision, and grasping hands, traits that suggest it could have been capable of complex behavior. Paleontologist Dale Russell even speculated that if dinosaurs hadn't gone extinct, Troodons might have evolved into intelligent, human-like creatures he called dinosauroids. But let's be real, even the smartest dinosaurs were probably nowhere near building cities or launching rockets. So, what about something even stranger, like a civilization based on fungi? In 2000, a Japanese biologist named Toshituki Nakagaki conducted an experiment that blew everyone's minds. He placed a slime mold in a maze with a sugar cube at the end. Within hours, the mold figured out the shortest path to the sugar without a brain. This raises a wild question. Could fungi or other simple organisms have formed some kind of ancient intelligent network? If so, their civilization would leave behind no physical traces, just subtle chemical clues. Of course, not everyone is on board with the Silurian hypothesis. Critics point out that there's no direct evidence, no tools, no buildings, no artifacts. All the proposed chemical traces could be explained by natural processes. Evolution makes it unlikely that any species before humans could have developed advanced technology. So, was there an ancient civilization before us? The answer is, we don't know. But the Silurian hypothesis isn't really about proving the existence of lizard people or dinosaur engineers. It's about challenging our assumptions and asking, what don't we know about Earth's history? And who knows, maybe one day we'll discover a clue that changes everything.
It seems that humanity has gone a long way since the first people appeared on Earth. We've invented so much cool stuff and developed new technologies. We've risen above other species after having built an advanced civilization. We've come from living in caves and cooking our food on fire to walking on the moon and creating 3D breakfasts. Does it mean we can be considered a Type 5 civilization? Oh, I see you're confused. Let me tell you about these civilization types and what they mean. The Type 1 title is given to species that have managed to harness all the available energy of their home planet. That's why this civilization is called a planetary civilization. They gather and store this energy to satisfy the demands of a growing population. We would need to boost our current energy production more than 100,000 times to get to this stage. And then we would be able to get control over all natural forces on the planet, like volcanoes, storms, or earthquakes. It's hard to believe, but it's actually a very basic level. You'll see it later. As for now, let's move to a Type 2 civilization. It can use and store energy at the scale of a star system. That's why this type is often called a stellar civilization. Experts have suggested several potential ways to do it. The most popular one is called the Dyson Sphere. This hypothetical device could encompass every single inch of a star, gathering its energy and transferring it to the planet. What would so much energy mean for the Type 2? First of all, nothing we know about could wipe out such a developed civilization. Let's say a moon-sized object entered our solar system and was heading towards Earth. No need to panic. We would be able to vaporize it as soon as we noticed it. Or maybe we'd just move our planet out of harm's way. Now, a Type 3 civilization can control energy at the immense scale of the entire host galaxy. That's the reason it's called a galactic civilization. The inhabitants of such a civilization would probably be totally different from the human race. They could be cyborgs, both biological and robotic beings. Maybe there would be colonies of robots capable of self-replication. They would spread across the galaxy, colonizing star systems. And still, these species would be restrained by the laws of physics, unless they figured out how to travel at the speed of light. At first, the scale describing civilization types didn't go beyond Type 3, but later, it was extended, and that's how Types 4 and 5 appeared. A Type 4 civilization knows how to harness energy at the scale of the universe it lives in. This could probably allow its inhabitants to live inside supermassive black holes. In any case, they would need to tap into energy sources we can't even imagine at the moment, using currently unknown laws of physics. And finally, an incredibly advanced Type 5 civilization might be living somewhere out there. If we reached this level, we would be able to manipulate energy both within our universe and other universes. Of course, at the moment, we're a very long way from achieving a Type 5 civilization, but it's not impossible. Assuming our world remains intact, we might continue advancing with every next generation. Then, a day may come when we'd be able to travel anywhere we want in the multiverse. Maybe we'd even use wormholes. Theoretical bridges using space-time that creates shortcuts, reducing travel distance and time. We'd be able to tap into mysterious dark matter to produce energy. And we would find the answers to tons of mysteries about us and the universe. But guess what? At the moment, we're not even a Type 1 civilization. Yep, we're not even on the scale yet. Duh! First of all, we're facing some physical limitations of each type of energy source. Plus, we'd need to balance them not to trigger even more climate changes and not make pollution levels rise. Scientists researching this question have concluded that humanity could potentially reach the level of Type 1. But it wouldn't happen until at least 2371.
Imagine living in a world where technology has reached its highest point. Your daily routines are orchestrated by an AI, which anticipates your every need, from brewing your morning coffee to selecting a perfect evening outfit. The cityscape outside the window of your floating home is a marvel of efficiency. Flying pods whisk people to their destinations. Renewable energy sources power the giant megacity, creating an environment of pristine streets and clean air. At work, you have online meetings with colleagues living across galaxies, collaborating on projects that go beyond our current understanding. It sounds like a sci-fi story, but some extraterrestrial civilization might have already reached this level of development. Scientists started pondering the possibility of life beyond Earth long ago. They've been wondering what such life could look like and how humans could identify it from afar. This train of thought led to the development of several classification systems, including one called the Kardashev scale. It was proposed in 1964. This classification evaluates hypothetical alien civilizations based on how much energy they are able to harness. According to the scale, there are 3 types of civilizations. The first type is a technological level close to the current level of Earth. Type 2 is a civilization capable of harnessing the energy emitted by its own star. And the third type is a civilization that has learned to use the energy of an entire galaxy. This scale sure caught people's imagination. It was included in a 5-page paper called Transmission of Information by Extraterrestrial Civilizations. This work focuses on calculating how powerful a light signal from any point of the universe should be for us to detect it. Now, within the basic categories, humans are a Type 1 civilization on the Kardashev scale. But some experts claim we aren't even a 1, since we haven't managed to harness the equivalent of the entire energy of Earth. This makes us more like 0.7, and of course, we're far from being a civilization with a working Dyson sphere. A Dyson sphere is a theoretical mega-engineering project encircling a star with platforms that are orbiting it in a tight formation. It might be the ultimate solution for living space and energy production. With its help, the creators of this ginormous construction could have loads of surface area for living and the ability to capture every tiny bit of solar radiation produced by their main star. As for a Type 3 civilization, it extracts fusion and exotic energy, information, and raw materials directly from their galaxy. This civilization is capable of space travel via wormholes, intergalactic communication via subspace, and galaxy-scale influence. They have supreme access to energy and are spread all over the universe. After millions of years of evolution, a Type 3 civilization may actually be AI superintelligences. Androids, cyborgs, and humans may be considered subspecies in such a highly advanced galactic society. In the most hopeful scenario, humans would have found a way to coexist with their AI masters. Or there might be no humans in that world whatsoever. This civilization might have already ascended into beings of pure energy, capable of controlling and directing machines to carry out all kinds of work. Now, back to the Kardashev scale. Even though it focuses only on technosignatures, it acknowledges biosignatures too, suggesting that each search should inform the other. The discovery of the simplest organism, for example, on one of Saturn's moons, could increase the probability that many Type 2 civilizations exist in our galaxy. At the moment, SETI is the main player in the field of looking for extraterrestrial civilizations. It's a combined effort of enthusiast scientists who focus on receiving and analyzing signals from space in the radio and visible light regions of the electromagnetic spectrum. It's looking for non-random patterns that have been likely sent deliberately by technologically advanced beings. The first modern SETI search was Project OMA in 1960. It used a radio telescope in Green Bank, Virginia. SETI uses targeted searches concentrating on groups of nearby sun-like stars.
If humanity were to disappear, would any traces remain after millions of years? Or would time erase everything, leaving only faint hints behind? This question haunts scientists and researchers who tirelessly search for evidence of civilizations that might have existed long before us. But what if the evidence has already been discovered and we simply don't know how to interpret it? What if the remnants of these ancient societies are hidden in plain sight, waiting for us to piece together the puzzle? Today, we will dive into the mysteries of pre-human civilizations by creating a tier list based on strange discoveries, anomalous geological structures, and ancient myths. From enigmatic artifacts to catastrophic events, these mysteries challenge our understanding of history and force us to question, were we truly the first? Geological mysteries. Deep within the Earth's crust and layers of sedimentary rock, objects are found that defy conventional explanations. These geological anomalies suggest the possibility of advanced activity long before humans walked the Earth. One of the most baffling examples is the Klerksdorp spheres, discovered in South Africa. These tiny metallic spheres, often no larger than a few centimeters, feature perfectly grooved surfaces and are estimated to be around 2.8 billion years old. How did they form? Some scientists argue they are the result of natural processes, such as mineral concretion, while others speculate they could be remnants of a long-lost civilization with advanced technology. Another mystery lies in the traces resembling mechanical parts found in rock layers dating back hundreds of millions of years. These artifacts, often dismissed as natural formations, bear uncanny resemblances to gears, screws, and other mechanical components. Could they be evidence of ancient machinery, or are they simply the result of geological oddities? The debate continues, but one thing is clear. These findings challenge our understanding of Earth's history. Ancient myths and legends. Myths and legends from cultures around the world often speak of civilizations that existed long before recorded history. These stories, passed down through generations, may hold kernels of truth about pre-human societies. For example, Sumerian texts mention the existence of antediluvian kings who ruled for thousands of years before a great flood wiped them out. Similarly, and Hindu texts like the Mahabharata describe advanced technologies, including weapons of mass destruction that resemble modern nuclear bombs. The Mayan myths also tell of peoples who came before them only to vanish without a trace. Are these stories mere fabrications, or do they preserve memories of real civilizations that once thrived on Earth? While skeptics argue that myths are purely symbolic, others believe they could be distorted accounts of historical events. If so, these legends might be our only window into a world that existed long before humans. Technological anomalies. Some archaeological discoveries suggest that ancient civilizations might have possessed technologies far beyond what we typically attribute to them. These anomalies challenge our assumptions about the capabilities of early societies and raise the possibility of lost knowledge. One of the most striking examples is the city of Pumapunku in Bolivia. This ancient site features massive stone blocks, some weighing over 100 tons, cut with astonishing precision. The edges are so smooth and precise that they appear to have been made with advanced machinery, yet they date back to a time when such technology was supposedly non-existent. How were these blocks transported and assembled without modern tools? Another example is the Great Pyramid of Giza, a marvel of engineering that continues to baffle experts. The precision of its construction, alignment with celestial bodies, and the sheer scale of the project suggest a level of knowledge and skill that seems out of place for its time. Could these structures be evidence of a civilization that achieved technological sophistication long before us? Traces of catastrophic events. If advanced civilizations existed before humans, what happened to them? Some researchers believe that catastrophic events, such as global floods, asteroid impacts, or massive volcanic eruptions, could have wiped them out entirely. This idea is central to the Silurian hypothesis, which explores the possibility of pre-human civilizations and the likelihood of finding evidence of their existence. According to this hypothesis, Earth's geological processes act as a strong filter, erasing almost all traces of ancient societies over millions of years. Erosion, tectonic activity, and the recycling of Earth's surface layers make it nearly impossible to preserve evidence of civilizations that existed more than a few million years ago. However, some clues remain. For instance, sudden spikes in the concentration of certain isotopes in geological layers could indicate ancient nuclear events or other large-scale catastrophes. Similarly, unusual geological formations, such as the Carolina Basin in the United States, have been linked to possible asteroid impacts that could have devastated entire civilizations. While these traces are far from conclusive, they suggest that Earth's history may be far more complex than we realize. Evidence that's hard to ignore. At the top of our tier list are the discoveries that challenge the very foundations of our understanding of history. These findings are so compelling that they force us to reconsider the timeline of human and pre-human existence. One such example is the stone tools found in California mines, which are estimated to be several million years old. If humans didn't exist at that time, who created these tools?
could they be the work of an entirely different species or civilization? Another enigma is the Piri Reis map voyage, created by a medieval Ottoman admiral. This map, which dates back to 1513, depicts parts of the world with remarkable accuracy, including the coastline of Antarctica, without its ice cover. How could a 16th century cartographer have known about the shape of a continent that was only officially discovered in the 19th century? Some researchers believe the map is based on much older sources, possibly from a civilization with advanced knowledge of geography. All these mysteries, geological anomalies, ancient myths, technological wonders, and traces of catastrophic events paint a picture of a world that may have been far more advanced and complex than we ever imagined. If civilizations existed before humans, they likely faced challenges similar to ours: environmental disasters, resource depletion, or even self-destruction. Their disappearance serves as a sobering reminder of the fragility of civilization and the impermanence of human achievements. But the most pressing question remains: if such civilizations rose and fell before us, could the same fate await humanity? Are we merely another chapter in Earth's long history, destined to leave behind only faint traces for future beings to ponder? As we continue to explore these mysteries, we may uncover not only the secrets of the past, but also clues to our own survival in the future. The search for pre-human civilizations is more than an academic exercise. It is a journey into the unknown, a quest to understand our place in the vast tapestry of time. And who knows, the answers we seek might be closer than we think.
Traveling to space costs a fortune, but there's a way to make it affordable. You step into an elevator, push the button, and voila! You're flying to the stars, all thanks to nanotubes. But then something hits the elevator on the way. You're stuck inside, and now you're doomed to float in space forever. Now, if you want to travel in space, get ready to shell out around $55 million. But in the near future, you'll probably be able to travel to space with just the push of a button without breaking the bank, because space elevators might come into play. While the idea of galactic lifts seems like something out of a sci-fi movie, it is a real possibility that could revolutionize space travel. With an estimated cost of $8 billion, space elevators could be a one-time investment that would last us forever. NASA alone spends around $2.7 million on rocket fuel per minute. To launch a rocket, they need to pay up to $178 million. These costs could be significantly reduced with the use of elevators. Most super tall buildings on Earth have a massive foundation to help with their balance and weight. As you look up, they get thinner and thinner. Even the tallest building in the world, the Burj Khalifa, is massive at the bottom and narrow at the top. If we wanted to construct something like a gigantic lift, we would need an enormous amount of concrete to build a foundation for it, which goes against the point of saving some cash. Now, get a string, tie a ball at the end of it, and start spinning it. The string in your hand will stay in one place, and the ball will revolve around your hand. This is called centrifugal force, and the elevator will work in the same way. The ball will be the base in space, and the rope will hang toward Earth. The station from where we would enter the elevator would be in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean, and the line would extend from there. For this to be possible, the line must be perfectly synchronized with Earth's rotation. Otherwise, it would simply break or wrap around the Earth like a scarf. Also, the orbit the line would be following should be a perfect circle, because the line wouldn't be able to get shorter or extend. A bunch of research has been done using algebra to find the ideal solution. Wait a second, there's a use for algebra? Never mind. Meanwhile, I won't bore you with the math. We'll go straight to the point where the precise distance from the station in the Atlantic to the one in space must be 22,236 miles above the Earth, where the geosynchronous orbit starts. There, the four outward forces are much stronger than the downward force. That's why the station would stay in one place. When you construct a house or a building, you start from the bottom going up. But to create this engineering wonder, we would need to do everything in reverse and start at the top. The main problem here would be the weight. If the line was too heavy, it would disrupt the orbit, and the conveyor dumbwaiter host would not work. So, we need to balance the station in space to ensure it worked flawlessly. Steel is one of the most robust materials on Earth. The cable in every lift is made from steel. But when you need a 22,236-mile-long cable, things can get tricky. Steel is hard to break, but it's cumbersome. And when you have to use a lot of it, problems start to arise. We use heavy steel a lot in construction, but we have lighter materials that might put less stress on the station and eliminate this problem. Also, the line would have to be tapered because, at the endpoint, there would be close to zero stress. But it would still have to be thicker than really needed due to a bunch of safety factors. At the start, the rope would be around 0.5 inches. After using some complicated math, we can figure out the thickness at the end, which is a number so long I am unable to pronounce it. But believe me, it's a big one. So, steel is off the list. Another candidate is Kevlar, which is 5 times stronger than steel. And if we added such materials as carbon and titanium into the mix, the strength would increase tenfold. The line would have a diameter of around 262 to 557 feet. This is drastically smaller than the diameter of the steel cable could be. The bad news is that doing this is too pricey. So, if we don't find the ideal medium to build a cable, the idea of the space elevator will just be a massive waste of time. If only we had some magically light material with a power of 60 gigapascals, which would have a taper ratio of 1.6. Oh wait, we actually do have this unique material. It's called carbon nanotube. It has a strength of 130 gigapascals, which is much more than we need. Nanotubes are made out of carbon and are 100,000 times thinner than a human hair. This material is solid and has good conductive power, which is possible thanks to its unique atomic structure. We use this product in many things, from batteries to optics, and it can be modified entirely and adapted for more uses. Bradley Edwards is the guy responsible for this crazy idea. NASA was looking for new innovations, and they said, "Don't do anything too crazy and start building a space hoist." I guess Bradley took this as a challenge and started working on the elevator. Edwards wrote a paper about a galactic conveyor. When he published it, he expected many people to find flaws in his work, but surprisingly, nobody did. His work was spot on. He came up with the idea of strapping a nanotube line to a rocket and launching it into space. The other end of the rope would fall onto Earth, and robots would use this rope to climb up and make it longer, so we could start building an elevator space station. After this, the elevator could start transporting everything, from solar panels to tourists. In the future, space tourism could be totally possible. Who knows? We might even go on vacations in space. Hey, looking for some atmosphere for your getaway? Well, don't come here. We don't have any. Oops, probably not a good advertising slogan, huh? Meanwhile, a couple of years ago, we could only create microscopic carbon nanotubes. But as time went on, much more research was done to make them bigger. Now they reach up to a few inches. In 20 years, they could be miles long. Carbon costs $28 per ounce. If we do the math, we would see that we would need around $1 billion to build a lift. Yeah, it sounds expensive, but it's a long-term solution to space travel, and it can actually save us a lot of money in the long run. Now, everything looks perfect on paper, but NASA's main reason why they chose not to go along with this project is that right now there are probably more than 128 million objects floating in orbit, and they might pose a real threat to the elevator. The lift could be made to withstand a few hits now and then, but getting hammered non-stop is not part of the plan. Still, Bradley argues that tons of monitoring devices track space debris. Thus, the elevator could avoid them all. Now, if something hit the elevator or the line somehow broke, the consequences would not be too bad. If there were no passengers on board, of course. If the line got cut, the elevator would simply float away into space, posing no threat to people on Earth. In Japan, engineers are trying to build a space elevator. The lift could be used for space mining, too. We could easily cover the cost of the entire elevator by collecting asteroids, because some of them are made of expensive metals. We could mine them and quickly bring them back to Earth. Wow, you're zipping through space in a large ship as big as 3 New York City Central Parks. There's a lot of commotion going on. No, it's not some alien invading the spaceship. It's a very important day. The date is January 22nd, 2700. You've just been born outside of the Earth's atmosphere. Happy birthday! There's a medical team attending to everything. Futuristic gadgets help out with every aspect. And the view from the giant spherical glass ship is nothing but the incredible vastness of space. You can't even see Earth anymore. The spaceship is flying to a new destination millions of miles away. ETA on reaching that new host planet? Decades. Fast forward a bit. You're 25 years old, and this spaceship's the only home you've ever known. So far. You've learned all the ins and outs of the ship. You start your day in your dorm, which has all the essentials: a small compact bathroom, a mini kitchen, a bunk bed, and a magnificent view of the stars and planet outside the ship's reinforced glass. And you never need to worry about space radiation. The ship has an everlasting magnetic shield that reflects space radiation, so it doesn't seep its way onto the ship. Otherwise, there'd be big problems. The ship was designed to have artificial gravity. Astronauts normally lose 1 to 2% of their bone density every month they're up in space, since they're just floating around all the time. But now, I mean in the future, in deep space travel, they're able to solve this problem. You make your way out of your dorm and see a wave of fellow crew members making their way to work. They're all gliding through on their advanced mini hoverboards, and everyone's wearing different colors, a space-age uniform. Yours is blue, so you hop on your board and join the blue wave. You get to the underpass of the space transport and begin your work. As an engineer on board, your job is super important, maintaining the ship and keeping it running. But something's wrong. Numbers are flashing all over the panels, and the dreaded red light won't stop blinking. You alert your coworkers, but they don't know what's happening either. Quick, you keep checking the logs and all the complicated equations, but nothing adds up. Panic starts to spread throughout the ship. The hair on your arms is standing on end. You try to click on as many buttons and switches as you can. The buzzing keeps getting louder and louder. The light is flashing brighter. Some of your colleagues make a break for it, and you're all alone in the red room. Suddenly, finally, your supervisor rushes down to help. After a while, the two of you figure it out. Whew, that was close. You still have a lot to learn about managing the ship. Since your early years, you were assigned to work as an engineer. You were great at physics, chemistry, math, all those sciencey things. It's just another day in the office. But on this ship, you may make captain one day. After work, you get a call from your friends wanting to hang out. And when I say call, I mean a phoneless device that lets you communicate with anyone while seeing all their info through a hologram projection that only you can see. You can also use it to listen to old tunes from Earth. Pop music has now become classical music, and movies are now 3D projections of your own imagination. You make your way out of the underpass and go up to the Space Plaza. That's where everyone hangs out when they have time off. Some cafes, restaurants, a barber shop, even an ice cream parlor. You've never hung out anywhere else. The space transport is essentially a small city which has all the important things society needs. That includes a biosphere full of animals and plants from different climates on Earth. Many tropical forests, many deserts, many rainforests, you name it. The biologists on board make sure to keep it all healthy so you feel like you're at home. Not that you've ever set foot on Earth. You enter the wild savanna and see some gazelles galloping around. A few wildebeest seem to be rummaging around, and a small pack of lions are on the prowl. In the jungle, you feel the humidity and the thick leaves and bushes all around. Some mountain gorillas are playing, and there are little tree frogs here and there. And lurking in the trees, making its way down for a sip of water, is a jaguar. Over in the dry desert, you see some roaming camels, a little rattlesnake slithering its way out of the heat, and some little scorpions crawling around in the sand. You learned a whole lot of biology these last 25 years. You know all about Earth, but you've never been there. Weird. After the tour of nature's habitats, you hear an announcement on the PA. It's the captain. The new planet is hours away, earlier than anticipated. Everyone assume positions for landing. Everyone on the ship rushes to their dormitories, except the key crew members needed to run the ship. You strap into your bunk bed that turns into a seat with fancy interstellar seatbelts. You look out your window and see a blue dot in the distance. It gets bigger and bigger, and it looks a whole lot like Earth, from far away at least. That didn't take all that long, only 25 years. Wonder what's going under the hood of that spaceship. You look back at your life in space, knowing this first part of it is coming to an end. It's kind of like living at the South Pole. At the bottom of the world lives a small community of scientists who work between winter and summer doing all kinds of research, from climate and geology to meteorology and astronomy. Their lives must be similar to living here in outer space. They have their own bunkers, scientific labs, and even recreational rooms for sports and music. The nature on the planet you're approaching is unlike anything on Earth. Tropical trees soaring higher than the highest skyscrapers. Oceans that are so wild, there are hurricanes that last for years, just roaming about. The pilot announces the landing. It's all good. Time to get to work. You unstrap yourself and head outside to see the new planet for yourself. Walking on land feels like arriving on a new planet. The humidity is thick and the wind is warm. The ship landed on the tropical side of the planet, where studies show is the best place to begin a brand new settlement. It's not going to be easy. Humans usually begin new settlements next to lakes and rivers. Think of the Mesopotamians, the ancient Egyptians, the Aztecs. The list is endless. They began as small settlements until they grew to be fully functioning mega-civilizations. By trading and exploring, they were able to advance their technology, learn new languages, and discover awesome cooking recipes. Hey, I could go for some pasta and sushi right about now. According to scientists, being born in space could alter the way humans look. Human heads could be bigger within thousands of generations. Who knows? There's no way to simulate it on Earth. We can even have different new skin colors, since we would need more melanin, that pigment stuff that protects us from sun radiation. Being closer to the sun or any hot burning mass of fire might mean we'd produce more or different kinds of melanin to protect us. We might turn dark brown, purple, gray, or even green. We'd have to wait a couple of million years to find out. And with no gravity, humans would have to get used to having a lower bone density, kind of like birds have. That means we'd probably be weaker than our old Earth human selves and have some slightly odd physical things going on. Gravity is essential for our balance, and mobility is one of the key factors for human survival. So, without gravity, we'd most likely have exoskeleton suits for walking and running, or taking out the trash. Now, nothing like this is going to happen for a very long time. They're still brainstorming how to bring someone into this world, or out of this world. Technically speaking, outer space is considered to be 62 miles above sea level from any continent on the world. Beyond that, endless possibilities. Now in space, inky darkness between blinding points of light does a great job. It hides black holes, gaping, hungry, and scary. Their blackness makes it really difficult for astronomers to find detailed information about these space monsters. When a powerful and massive star reaches the end of its life, it can't just fade into nothingness. One of the most likely scenarios, the star will run out of its nuclear fuel. Then, in a blazing flash of light, it'll collapse under its own gravity. If the star was large enough, it'll turn into a black hole. There's a hypothetical type of black hole called primordial. Scientists have never gotten any real proof of their existence. These holes are insanely old and quite tiny, by black hole standards, that is. Astronomers believe they could appear several milliseconds after the Big Bang. At that time, stars and galaxies weren't born yet. It means primordial black holes probably witnessed the entire history of the universe. By now, the smallest primordial black holes have most likely evaporated away, but the bigger ones can still be scattered out there in space. But how did primordial black holes appear in the first place? In the very beginning, space wasn't the same. In some regions, it was hotter, in others, cooler, and some areas were extremely dense. Scientists believe these dense spots could collapse into primordial black holes. The most curious thing, though? These holes might be so small exactly because they popped up right after the Big Bang. The longer it took a black hole to appear, the larger it was. The mass difference between older, smaller, and younger, bigger black holes was incredible. Compare the mass 1,000 times greater than our Sun's and that of a jelly bean. Now you get it. There was a theory that primordial black holes could actually be dark matter. This matter is believed to make up around 80% of the mass of the observable universe. Astronomers can't see this bizarre ingredient directly since it doesn't emit light or any kind of energy. The idea remained unpopular for decades, but recently, scientists have realized there are many more black holes in the universe than they used to think, and it means the theory might actually work. And the vast and still hidden from us population of Big Bang black holes could not only make up but be dark matter. After all, astronomers haven't discovered a single dark matter particle yet, even after decades of searching. Some scientists argue that dark matter can't be tons of multi-sized primordial black holes. They would collide far too often for this to work out. Others object that black holes might exist in twos, and then a third one can always approach the pair and replace one of the initial holes. After all, our universe is swarming with black holes, and there's no lack of them. This process would repeat again and again, meaning there would be almost no merges or collisions. Primordial black holes might stay in clusters the size of the distance between our Sun and the nearest star. Each of these clusters can be home to thousands of black holes, all crammed together. A 30 solar mass monster of a black hole might sit at the center, with more common stellar ones occupying the rest of the space. Such clusters can be everywhere astronomers think dark matter is. But so far, this is still only an exciting theory, and some scientists don't support it yet. More data is needed. Now, black holes sometimes behave like massive galactic volcanoes. From time to time, they flare up, but instead of spewing lava, they produce enormous amounts of energy, and it makes gaping holes in the surrounding material and gas. A short while ago, scientists discovered one of the largest craters in the universe. Radio and X-ray telescopes detected a supermassive black hole that threw a temper tantrum many years ago. It happened in a galaxy cluster about 390 million light-years away from Earth. The crater left behind, which was actually a hole punched in the cluster's hot gas, could fit 15 Milky Way galaxies. Whoa. Recently, astronomers have found out that one of the most massive stars in the neighborhood might just have vanished. The star used to hover in space 75 million light-years away from Earth. It's usually too far away for scientists to clearly see individual stars, unless they're really massive, like the one we're talking about. It was gigantic and shining 2.5 million times brighter than our Sun. For the last time, astronomers saw the star's light in 2011. But when they decided to examine it more closely several years later, they couldn't find it. Such huge stars usually go out in an extremely bright supernova, but nothing here, which puzzled the scientists to no end. There's a theory it collapsed into a black hole, and it happened without triggering a supernova first. It does occur among stars nearing the end of their lives, but very rarely. KB 141b is a planet outside of our solar system. At first glance, it's not that different from Earth. It has liquid oceans that evaporate into clouds, condense, and get back to the surface as rain. But instead of water, this all happens with rock. The surface of the exoplanet is covered with lava seas tens of miles deep. The temperature on K2-141b reaches 5,000 degrees during the day. That's hot enough for the magma in the oceans to vaporize into the atmosphere. Then, supersonic winds, which can move at the speed of 1 mile per second, carry this rock vapor to the planet's night side. The vaporized magma cools down, becomes liquid again, and falls as a rocky rain. Wow, looks like we're gonna need a bigger bumbershoot. A star in the galaxy GSN 069 might turn into a planet the size of Jupiter in the next trillion years or so, all thanks to the star's regular encounters with a black hole. First, astronomers noticed bizarre X-ray bursts. Those were super bright and went off every 9 hours. After examining this phenomenon, the researchers realized it was a star getting flung in a unique orbit around a black hole, and the flashes they saw were the material being slurped off the star's surface. It happened every time the star darted past its greedy host. Over millions of years, the black hole has already transformed the red giant into a white dwarf, and the process isn't going to stop anytime soon. Astronomers have recently discovered some traces of phosphine in Venus's atmosphere. On Earth, this colorless and flammable gas is often found near microbes. That's why a new theory claims there might be life on Venus. But if there is, it could only appear high in the clouds, because no living organism would be able to survive the planet's extreme environment. Its surface is incredibly dry, with no liquid water, and the pressure 90 times greater than that on Earth's surface. The temperatures there reach almost 900 degrees, hot enough to melt certain metals. So that's a no? Methane, a gas that's usually produced by living things, was found on Mars in 2013. European Space Agency's Mars Express spacecraft detected it in Gaia crater near the Martian equator. This discovery might one day answer the question if there's life on Mars. Asteroid 2019 OK scared scientists by sneaking up on our planet in July of 2019. This rather large rock, up to 400 feet across, appeared seemingly out of nowhere. It traveled uncomfortably close to the Earth, a mere 45,000 miles away. That's less than 1/5 of the distance to the Moon. The Sun's outer layer is way hotter than its surface. The temperatures vary from 10,000 degrees close to the surface and a mind-boggling 1 million degrees in the corona. That's the Sun's outermost layer. The reason for this phenomenon might be nanoflares. Those are regular, powerful bursts of heat from the star. Another theory blames the layer that lies just beneath the Sun's surface. It seems to generate a weak magnetic field. That's why, when the energy from this layer leaves the Sun, it heats the corona through a mesh of magnetic branches and roots. The Moon might still be shrinking. Our planet's natural satellite has become 150 feet skinnier than it used to be several hundred million years ago. If its insides keep cooling, it might explain the quakes shaking the Moon's surface. In 2019, NASA's InSight lander, whose goal was to study the interior of Mars, registered the first Marsquake ever. These quakes were coming fast, about 2 per day. Most of them were tiny. You wouldn't even feel them if they happened on our planet. So far, more than 300 Marsquakes have been detected. Those are the first quakes on any space body other than the Earth and the Moon. Another mysterious phenomenon discovered by the mission was bizarre magnetic pulses. They occurred every midnight around the lander. It's still unclear what those pulses are. Maybe after midnight they're gonna let it all hang out, or something. Pluto's atmosphere rises much higher above the surface of the dwarf planet than, let's say, Earth's. It also has more than 20 layers, all of them freezing cold and extremely condensed. Oh, by the way, our Moon also has some sort of atmosphere. Called an exosphere, it consists of helium, neon, and argon. It's 10 trillion times less dense than Earth's atmosphere. Or, really thin. You wake up and can't recognize your room. That's definitely it, but your desk is on the wall, and the dresser is on the ceiling. It's closed, but you can somehow see every folded t-shirt in it. You wipe your eyes. Nothing changes. This isn't a dream. Welcome to the fourth-dimensional world. Wait, rewind. To understand the fourth-dimensional world, we need to look at the others. So, a zero-dimension world is just a point. Now, if you expand it, you get a one-dimensional world that's a simple line. It only has one measure, and that's length. The creatures living in this world can only move in one direction, either left or right. In general, a dimension is a direction in which an object can move. So now we'll add another line perpendicular to the one we have. We get a flat surface with a length and width, like a piece of paper. The flat creatures that live in a 2D world can move left and right, and now forward and backward. To turn this flat paper world into one we're more familiar with, we draw parallel lines from each corner of the square. Now we get height, the third dimension. The objects of this world have three measures: length, width, and height. They can move in three dimensions: left and right, back and forth, up and down. That's the world we live in. But now we need to figure out where to put the next perpendicular line to get a fourth dimension. It's no easy task, because this fourth dimension, as well as the fifth and 12th ones scientific theories say could exist, are hidden from us because of the limitations of our perception. While we were going through the first three dimensions, we could see that with every next dimension, we expand the possibilities. The objects become more complicated. As inhabitants of a 3D space, we can easily imagine what 1D and 2D worlds are like because they're part of our own. But for residents of those worlds, it's not that easy to understand ours because they're just not able to perceive it. Why? Imagine you're one of these 2D flatlanders and you're living your simple flat life. If a sphere, a 3D object, somehow appears in your world, the only thing you'll be able to see is a dot that appears out of nowhere, and then grows into a longer and longer line, and then shrinks back down into a dot before disappearing. A flatlander could combine all these lines to get a circle. Or, if he could look at it from above, he can't, that would involve height, it would just be a dot growing into a larger and larger circle and then getting smaller. Either way, our flatlander ends up looking at a flat circle, not a sphere. That's exactly what will happen to us if we try to understand a 4D object. We'll see it like a 3D object, appearing, somehow changing, and then disappearing. We wouldn't be able to make sense out of it. For example, let's take a 4D hypersphere and put it in our world. Here's what you'll see. Looks like a regular old sphere appearing, growing, shrinking, and disappearing. Good luck trying to combine the spheres all together to make sense out of its 4D shape. Okay, let's try it with something a little easier. Remember, 1D is a line, 2D is then a square, and 3D adds more perpendicular lines to get a cube. To get a 4D cube, called a tesseract, we connect two cubes. We know that every side of a 3D cube is a square. In a tesseract, every side of it is a cube. This shape looks really confusing, especially if we realize that it's a 3D projection of a 4D object on your 2D screen. Just like the Flatlanders, we're unable to fully understand what a higher dimensional world is like. Even scientists have a vague and limited perception about it. They mostly describe it in complex mathematical equations, not physical objects. But think about it this way. Technically, every single day, 4D or even 10D beings could enter our world, and we wouldn't even know it. Now, if the first, second, and third dimensions are length, left and right, breadth, back and forth, and height, up and down, what does that make the fourth dimension? How about a real-world example? There are 2D ultrasounds that show a flat black and white image, mostly made up of outlines. Then there's 3D. It's basically like a normal photograph you'd see in an album. Things have a form, depth, shadows. Then there's 4D ultrasound. This is an image that's constantly being updated with time. The fourth dimension. Some call it strength, but it's basically space-time, in and out and always. So you wake up in your room in a 4D world. The planet is a hypersphere. Everything around you is as if you lived in a sphere. Your wardrobe is still up on the ceiling, and you need to get dressed. Wait, where are you going? Stay right there. I know you still think the shortest way from A to B is a straight line, but you're in a 4D world now. The shortest way here is through. So just look through your wardrobe, find your favorite t-shirt and jeans, and grab them. That's better. Hey, your roommate is making coffee. Let's grab something to eat too. You could just teleport there, but let's take the long way. No, not the stairs, through the walls and floor. Doors and stairs will probably be non-existent in a 4D world. There's your roommate. Don't be confused, he's okay. Albert Einstein called the 4D universe a space-time world. Here, the past, present, and future all come together. So, like every other object, your friend exists in every moment of his entire life. I know what you're wondering. If you can move through walls, can you move through people too? Yeah, but please don't reach into his head and tickle his brain. That's taboo in this world. Even if it can be done, it shouldn't. Here's another cool thing. You can see people's emotions. See the yellowish shadow around him? It means he isn't in a very good mood. But wait, mentally, you don't need words here. They're too slow. You can reach any person mentally within a moment, even if they're on the other side of the planet. Now, let's grab your sandwich, laptop, some work papers. Oh no, you don't need this bag. Forget it. You have pockets, right? Put it all there. You'll see it fits perfectly. There's endless space. Well, and no reason to take things with you when you can instantly teleport. Forgot your wallet? 1 second. Now you have it. Okay, you're a little late already. Work starts at 9 and your boss is going to be seething. But don't worry. Remember, you exist in any time, present, past, and future. Even though it's 9:12 already, just get there by 9. In fact, let's take a vacation day. Teleport to Rome. See all the sights as they were through all of time and history. Master the Italian language. Where to next? When to next? The choice is yours. You can always travel back and get to your job like a punctual hard worker. And still, life in a 4D world would probably be something entirely different than even my wild imagination can come up with. So, I'll let you finish this story down below. Time can stretch or shrink depending on where you are. Climb to the top of an extremely high mountain, and time will pass a teeny tiny bit faster than if you were down in a valley. That's all because of gravity and how it affects time. We hardly notice it in our everyday life, but for scientists and space agencies preparing to send people to the moon, these minuscule differences in time really do matter. We'll get to answer the why question a bit later. Right now, a new space race is underway. Many countries want to establish long-term bases on the moon. With humans up there, things like reliable timekeeping become crucial. The thing is, the moon doesn't operate on Earth's time. A day on the moon runs slightly faster than a day on Earth. The difference is about 56 microseconds, and it seems insignificant. But over time, even such a difference can add up, creating bigger issues. So, to keep lunar missions running smoothly and prevent things from drifting out of sync, NASA and scientists around the world are now dealing with a tricky challenge: creating an entirely new lunar timescale. NASA is supposed to start using it by 2026. It's the same year they hope to send astronauts back to the moon for the first time in 50 years. But this new timescale is not just a moon time zone. It's actually an entire system that will adjust for the moon's faster time and keep everything synchronized with Earth's time systems. Only in this case will missions be able to run smoothly. You see, on Earth our timekeeping is already surprisingly complicated. It might seem like time should be a straightforward concept, but keeping accurate time is actually a precise science, especially when you consider how much timekeeping affects our daily lives. So, to keep global time coordinated, scientists rely on something called Coordinated Universal Time, also known as UTC. This global time standard is based on ultra-precise atomic clocks that scientists place in separate locations all over the world. Atomic clocks are cool because they measure time based on the consistent vibrations of atoms, so they're super stable and accurate. This helps scientists make sure UTC is the same for everyone everywhere. These atomic clocks also take into account that time moves slightly more slowly the closer you are to the center of our planet. So, atomic clocks positioned closer to the Earth's surface tick a bit more slowly due to stronger gravitational pull. This effect, explained by Einstein's theory of relativity, happens because gravity affects time. By spreading atomic clocks across different elevations, scientists average out all the tiny time differences caused by gravity. Also, for precise timekeeping, scientists occasionally add leap seconds to account for the small natural changes in Earth's rotation speed. It sounds pretty technical, but this process of keeping everyone on the same time helps make the modern world function. After all, precise timing is crucial for global trading, GPS navigation, and even internet communications. But time on the Moon works differently. Our natural satellite has a weaker gravitational field than Earth. That's why clocks on the Moon tick a bit faster. This difference means that lunar clocks are very likely to slowly drift away from Earth clocks if there's no correction. It can lead to big problems when astronauts need to keep in close contact with Earth or navigate around the lunar surface. NASA's solution is something called a lunar timescale. Scientists aren't going to adjust moon clocks to match Earth exactly. Instead, they want to establish a unique system that measures lunar time accurately, but is also easy to convert back to Earth time. Think of it as creating a whole new framework just for the Moon. To make this lunar time system work, NASA is cooperating with international colleagues like the European Space Agency. Together, they're setting up what they call LunaNet. This lunar network will be a bit like the Internet for the Moon. It'll make sure all the lunar clocks work together and align with Earth-based time. Just like how atomic clocks around the world coordinate for UTC on Earth, clocks on the Moon will be part of this larger LunaNet network. Now, scientists are pretty experienced when it comes to managing time in space. Global Positioning System satellites, which orbit Earth about 12,550 miles high, have atomic clocks on board. These clocks tick faster than clocks on the Earth's surface because they're quite far away from Earth's gravitational pull. But then, how does GPS navigation stay accurate? It's because scientists have figured out ways to slow those clocks down to match Earth's time. This experience with GPS clocks is a great base for what scientists need to do on the Moon. In some ways, it might be even easier than managing GPS. Scientists can work with lunar clocks as they naturally are, instead of needing to adjust them to sync perfectly with Earth. By setting up accurate lunar time from the start, scientists hope to avoid some of the complications of managing GPS satellites. And now, here's the interesting part, or maybe more interesting. To keep lunar timekeeping a reality, NASA and its partners want to set up clocks both on the lunar surface and on satellites orbiting the Moon. Some of these clocks will be long-lasting atomic clocks, and others will be crystal oscillators. Those offer stability over short time periods. Together, these clocks will create a network that scientists will be able to rely on. Meanwhile, atomic clocks for space don't come cheap. They can cost a staggering few $1,000,000 each. Luckily, crystal oscillators are more affordable, but they don't stay accurate over long periods. Once those clocks are set up, they'll work together as part of LunaNet, which will be NASA's framework for everything related to moon-based time and data networks. LunaNet will act like an internet for lunar operations. Different space agencies will contribute to it, like how internet service providers work for us on Earth. But there's another set of challenges, and it's connected with the Moon's rotation. Firstly, a day on the Moon lasts much longer than a day on our planet because it takes the Moon about 28 Earth days to make a full rotation. Plus, the Moon's equator experiences about 14 days of sunlight, followed by 14 days of darkness, unlike Earth's regular day-night cycle. And at the Moon's south pole, where NASA is going to establish future lunar missions, there are areas that stay lit or in shadow permanently. It might make it harder for astronauts to keep track of time. NASA and its partners hope to involve more countries in this project through international organizations like the International Astronomical Union. The idea is to get as many countries as possible on board with the lunar timescale, so that everyone exploring the Moon is on the same page. Now, another really exciting thing about all this is that figuring out lunar time could help other future space missions, like trips to Mars. The experience and knowledge we'll get from setting up a lunar timescale are likely to serve as a blueprint for managing time on even farther planets. That's one of the reasons why scientists are taking this lunar project so seriously. As for astronauts living on the Moon, a consistent, reliable time system will be essential, not just for navigation, but for everything from scientific experiments to day-to-day activities. NASA's Lunar Time Project is truly groundbreaking. It's the first step toward managing time as humans expand farther into space. And if they get it right, it'll mean that future astronauts won't just have Earth time to guide them. They'll also have a Moon time, and even, one day, a Mars time too. Precise timekeeping matters both for the sake of scientifically understanding the passage of time on the Moon and for setting up all the infrastructure necessary to carry out missions. Scientists are also eager to create a timescale from scratch because they can take everything they've learned about timekeeping on Earth and apply it to a new system on the Moon. Well, I'm out of time, so bye!
At breakneck speed, this mysterious object is zipping through our galaxy. It's moving at a staggering 1 million miles per hour. That's so fast it might potentially escape the Milky Way altogether. While scientists are trying to understand exactly what this space weirdo is, we're going into space to learn more about it. The object is currently moving at a distance of 400 light-years away from Earth. Let's have a closer look and try to figure out if it could be a runaway probe. Nah, it's way too large for that. The object is around 30,000 times the mass of Earth and 8% of the mass of the Sun. What a giant! Such a size places it in a category that Dr. Darren Baskill, an astronomy lecturer at the University of Sussex, describes as somewhere between a star and a planet. Stars moving at such extreme speeds are super rare. Only 1 or 2 out of every 1,000 local stars travel so incredibly fast. So, if one day you found a star moving as rapidly as our cosmic enigma, you'd see it leave our home Milky Way galaxy in just a few tens of millions of years. In terms of space and cosmic distances, it's a blink of an eye period of time. After all, such stars can live for tens of billions of years. Even though the mysterious object is only moving at 0.001% of the speed of light, it's still potentially fast enough to eventually break free from the gravitational pull of our galaxy and fly into intergalactic space. Let's put this speed into perspective. J1249 is traveling 2.6 times faster than the fastest space probe ever launched. I'm talking about the Parker Solar Probe. The Parker probe reached this speed in June 2024 while looping around the Sun. J1249 was discovered by citizen scientists volunteering for NASA's Backyard Worlds Planet 9 project. These volunteers sift through online images taken by NASA's Wide Field Infrared Explorer and NEOWISE missions. They're looking for anything interesting. 3 of those volunteers spotted a faint, fast-moving object as it moved across WISE images. When they realized what they were looking at, they were incredibly excited, but thought someone had already reported the space object. But surprisingly, that wasn't the case. At the moment, most scientists believe that CWISE J1249 could either be a low-mass star or a brown dwarf. That's a type of star that is larger than a planet but too small to support nuclear fusion in its core, like our Sun does. In other words, such stars don't have enough mass, and their cores can't burn their star fuel, radiating starlight. That's why brown dwarfs, often referred to as failed stars, are smaller and cooler than the Sun. They even have complex planet-like atmospheres, which have clouds and molecules. For example, H2O. Anyway, to confirm or disprove this theory, astronomers continued to observe the object with the help of ground-based telescopes. Soon, they found out that the object had an unusual composition, with much less iron and other metals, compared to typical stars or brown dwarfs. It allowed NASA to claim the unthinkable. J1249 could be one of the oldest stars ever found in our galaxy. Okay, that's certainly a game changer, but why is this potential star moving so fast? The research team has a few theories. For example, the object might be the remains of a binary star system where its companion, a white dwarf, exploded in a supernova after pulling too much material from J1249. Another possibility is that our mysterious traveler may have originated from a cluster of stars that dispersed after coming across two black holes. According to experts, one way to get to such extreme speeds is to fall toward an object and miss it. Such gravitational slingshots are how space probes are accelerated to extreme speeds, which allows us to explore the solar system up close over reasonable timescales. The same technique could also explain the speed of J1249. The star could have been born in the crowded center of our galaxy. Then it might have fallen toward a star, missed, and in the process was accelerated to extreme speeds. Well, let's leave astronomers to search for more evidence to confirm this exciting theory. Meanwhile, we're heading further to the binary star system 55 Cancri. It lies 41 light-years away from Earth and hosts an amazing planet, 55 Cancri E, also known as Janssen. This is a scorched super-Earth, 8 times the mass of our planet, and it orbits its star in just over 17 hours. Yep, the year on this planet is shorter than 1 day on Earth. Plus, it's 25 times closer to its star than Mercury is to our Sun. No wonder the planet's surface reaches blistering temperatures of 4,350 degrees Fahrenheit. That's hot enough to melt nearly any known metal. Back in 2010, a study found out that the host star of 55 Cancri E had an unusually high carbon-to-oxygen ratio. If this ratio was also true for the planet, it would mean that 55 Cancri E might have huge quantities of carbon. And the coolest thing? It would be in the form of diamonds. It'd make this space body a literal diamond planet. Sadly, some follow-up studies discovered that the carbon-to-oxygen ratio on the planet was less extreme than originally thought. It makes the idea of a diamond-encrusted world less feasible. On the bright side, planets don't always have to match the composition of their host stars exactly. If some other process topped up the carbon on 55 Cancri E, it could still be the most precious planet known in the universe. Definitely worth a visit. But let's leave the diamond planet behind and fly to Vega, which holds a special place as one of the brightest and most important stars in the sky. The brightest of other stars is measured against the brightness of Vega on a special magnitude scale, where Vega's magnitude is 0. A star with a magnitude of 1 is 2.5 times dimmer than Vega, and a star with a magnitude of -1 is 2.5 times brighter. Vega is also a pole star, although not at the moment. Right now, Earth's axis points toward Polaris, the North Star, but Earth's axial tilt draws a circle over 26,000 years, and Vega will again be the pole star in about 12,000 years. Just you wait. But the coolest thing about Vega, which sets it aside from other stars, is that it's not shaped like a perfect sphere. Unlike the Sun, which rotates slowly and is almost spherical, Vega spins very fast, completing one rotation in just 12.5 hours. And it causes it to bulge at the equator, taking on an egg-shaped appearance. And now, get ready for the most dangerous encounter of them all. But first, I must warn you. Even though space is unimaginably vast, it's populated extremely sparsely. The universe's average density is equivalent to 6 protons in 35 cubic feet. But some areas, known as voids or supervoids, contain even less matter. These regions are enormous and can span 30 to 300 million light-years, and there's almost nothing there. There are also places in the universe where time and space are distorted in ways that challenge our human comprehension, like binary black hole systems, where two massive black holes dance around each other before eventually merging. As they spiral closer, they release immense gravitational waves that ripple across space-time. The first detection of such waves was made by the Laser Interferometer Gravitational Wave Observatory in 2015. When it recorded the final collision of a black hole pair. In the final 20 milliseconds before the merger, the black holes released more gravitational energy than the total energy emitted by all the stars in the observable universe during the same period. But that's not all the universe has to offer. Once you start exploring, you can come across exoplanets like Korot 7b, where rock clouds form and send pebbles raining from the skies, or Kelt 9b, the hottest known planet with surface temperatures reaching 7,800 degrees Fahrenheit, or Tres 2b, the darkest planet ever discovered. It absorbs over 99% of the light it receives, making it blacker than coal. So, as you can see, in the vast, almost incomprehensible scale of the cosmos, mysterious, fast-moving objects, strange planets, and immense voids serve as a reminder of how much we have yet to learn about the universe. Usually, when we look at the photos of astronauts in space, we can see that they're sort of attached to the spacecraft. But there was one brave astronaut who took a wild step into the great unknown without any safety line connecting him to the shuttle. This brave man was Bruce McCandless, and he did that stunt back in 1984. How did he come back, you may ask? He did this cool trick using a nitrogen jetpack, which NASA called the Manned Maneuvering Unit. At first, he tried out some test maneuvers in the Challenger's payload bay, and only after he made sure it was all right did McCandless decide to go for it and glide a staggering 320 feet away from the shuttle. A bit of sad stats here. Out of the 430 people who have made the leap into space, 18 have sadly lost their lives, which gives us a fatality rate of just over 4%. With these numbers, it's safe to say that space shuttles are the least safe means of transport out there. Duh. Alright, let's make it a tad brighter. If we crunch the numbers a bit better, we can get a smaller percentage. But how? Well, 4% is a bit misleading because when we count, we take all the space flights. However, some people flew several times, which reduced the probability. With over 600 seats filled across 113 shuttle flights, the true fatality rate for shuttle missions is actually closer to 2%. Let's test your general knowledge now, shall we? So, what was the first living thing ever sent to space? If your answer is a monkey, you aren't right. Those who said dogs, sorry you guys, but it's not correct either. On the 9th of July, 1946, fruit flies became the first living creatures to make it to space during a suborbital V-2 rocket flight. Then, on the 20th of February, 1947, these little guys safely returned from their journey, opening the door for future human space exploration. Before, we sent to space mammals like the rhesus monkey, Albert II, in 1949, or the famous space dogs. Scientists spent a lot of time studying fruit flies to see how they reacted to radiation and the conditions of space travel. Researchers started using fruit flies for experiments back in the 1910s. Guess why? Because we humans share a lot of genes with these yucky pests. Imagine hearing some creepy music all of a sudden, when there's nothing but darkness around you and nobody is there to help you. Right, now imagine how elevated this experience was for astronauts who heard some creepy music in their space shuttle. Months before the moon landing, Apollo 10 astronauts were orbiting the moon, testing equipment, when they heard strange audio noises. Astronaut Eugene Cernan noted the eerie sounds, joking they were like weird music. At that moment, the astronauts didn't have contact with mission control. They were over the moon's dark side. Although the noises resembled something from a sci-fi film, NASA downplayed them as they were focused on the astronauts' mental health. Despite years of speculation, the source of the sounds remains unknown, with theories ranging from radio interference to charged particle activity. Cernan later remarked that they didn't take it seriously and didn't report it after the mission. Chances are, we've already received messages from new friends from other galaxies, but we just failed to understand them. In August 1977, some astronomers using the Big Ear radio telescope at Ohio University picked up a strange narrow-band radio signal from the constellation Sagittarius that lasted for 72 seconds. The signal buzzed at a frequency of 1,420 megahertz, which is significant because it matches the natural emissions from hydrogen. This frequency had been flagged by scientists almost 2 decades earlier as a likely choice for extraterrestrial civilizations trying to reach out to us. They dubbed it the WOW signal after one of the astronomers wrote "WOW" on their printout. We've never heard that signal again, and no one has been able to explain its origin satisfactorily. After spending about a month in space, astronauts start losing quite a lot of skin from the bottoms of their feet, especially those tough calluses they've built up over time. One astronaut even called Mission Control in a bit of a panic when he noticed a chunk of his heel drifting off in zero gravity. But no worries, as the old calluses peel away, new ones spring up from the tops of their feet. They need that grip to hold on to all the restraints, kind of like airborne trapeze artists. Going number 1 and seeing blood is as scary as it sounds, and yes, in the weightlessness of space, blood doesn't settle in the lower body in the same way it does on Earth. This can lead to some alarming situations on board. Natural urges are universal, regardless of location. There are 2 main reasons why astronauts are unable to use traditional toilets in space. First, water is an extremely valuable resource aboard a spacecraft. Second, there's no gravitational flow of water in space. The drinkable water on a space station is contained in pouches and is used accordingly. In a weightless environment, a specialized device with suction and disposable bags is used for waste collection, with the storage being replaced every 10 days. Additionally, spacecraft are equipped with complex systems designed to recycle and filter liquid waste, converting it back into usable water for the astronauts' daily needs. As if that wasn't enough, spending an extended period floating around in space brings another challenge. The body may lose its bursa sacs, those handy little cushions that sit between our hip joints. While this may not pose an immediate issue in the zero-gravity environment, returning to solid ground can turn the simple act of sitting down, whether in a chair or on a toilet, into a real struggle. The fluid shifts that contribute to blood-related issues don't stop there. They can also wreak havoc on astronauts' sinuses, creating a constant feeling of congestion. It feels like living in a stuffy room all the time, where relief seems just out of reach. Thus, the challenges of long-term space travel add up, making the experience as daunting as it is thrilling. Another challenge astronauts run into is vision loss, also known as ocular syndrome, which sounds all sciencey. While the exact cause is still a bit of a mystery, it's thought that extra pressure on the brain can mess with both the retinas and optic nerves. And here's a fun fact: it mostly affects guys. By the way, you might assume that shutting your eyes in space means it's pitch black, but that's not the case. Because of high levels of radiation, astronauts can still see bright lights when they zip through certain parts of their orbit. It's a pretty strange phenomenon that keeps them on their toes, even with their eyes closed. Switching gears, let's talk about bone health in space. It turns out that being weightless can really take a toll on astronauts' bones. Like, they can lose up to 2% of their bone mass every month, which is pretty wild. But the good news? They've come up with new exercise routines that help fight off that bone loss. So, while space travel definitely has its challenges, researchers are working hard to keep astronauts in tip-top shape as they explore the universe. The Big Crunch is a cool theory about how the universe might end, and it's basically the opposite of the Big Bang. So, imagine the universe expanding for ages, but then it hits the brakes and starts collapsing in on itself, maybe even forming a huge black hole. Scientists are looking into this by checking out the universe's density. If it's too dense, such a collapse might really happen. At first, people thought that gravity would eventually take over and stop the expansion from the Big Bang. But then we found this mysterious thing called dark energy, which is actually speeding up the universe's expansion. Because of that, it seems like the Big Crunch is pretty unlikely. Right now, the evidence shows that dark energy is here to stay. so the universe will just keep on expanding forever.
Miles and miles of yellow sand, treeless mountain ridges, and scorching hot sun over your head. And suddenly, something you'd never expect to come across in a barren desert. A small group of overexcited people. They're as happy as you would be if you'd won a lottery. They've just found an ancient tomb, once flooded with its walls in bad shape. But the stuff they discovered inside proves that this is the burial site of one of Egypt's most mysterious pharaohs. Historians have been hunting for his tomb for years, but no one expected it to hide ancient treasures. Fast forward. After careful examination of the site, Egyptian officials have announced the discovery of the tomb of King Thutmose II. It's the last missing tomb from Egypt's 18th dynasty. And this is also the first royal tomb found since King Tutankhamun's was discovered in 1922, in more than 100 years. A team of Egyptian and British archaeologists found the tomb in the Theban Mountains area, west of Luxor, near the famous Valley of the Kings. Before this, the site was only known as Tomb C4, but during their excavation, the team found clear evidence proving it belonged to King Thutmose II. Archaeologists actually found the entrance and main tunnel leading to the tomb in 2022. But at first, they thought it belonged to a queen because it was near the graves of Thutmose III's wives. It was also close to Queen Hatshepsut's tomb. Originally, it was prepared for her when she was just a royal wife. But everything changed when she became pharaoh. But we'll talk about this twist of fate a little later. But soon they realized that their discovery was much more significant. They found alabaster jars with Thutmose II's name and the words "deceased king" written on them. That's when they realized that the tomb was actually his final resting place. Sadly, Thutmose II's tomb has seen better days. According to the head of Egypt's antiquities sector and the leader of the Egyptian excavation team, the tomb suffered major damage from ancient floods not long after the pharaoh's death. Water swept through the burial chamber, likely destroying or displacing many of the original artifacts. Much of what had been once inside the tomb was moved elsewhere in an attempt to salvage it. The researchers found out that the tomb had a basic design, with an entrance, a sloping main corridor, and a burial chamber. The corridor was coated in white plaster and rose about 4.5 feet above the floor of the burial chamber. A large staircase and a very large descending corridor of the tomb indicated its grandeur. It took the team a long time to navigate through, though, as the tomb was blocked by flood debris and collapsed ceilings. Only after crawling through a 32-foot passageway with a small 16-inch gap at the top, the worst nightmare for those of us with claustrophobia, were they able to reach the burial chamber. There, they were in for another surprise. They cleared the debris, expecting to find the crushed remains of a burial beneath. But the tomb turned out to be completely empty, and it was not due to robbery. It had been deliberately emptied. The researchers soon realized that the tomb had been flooded since it had been built underneath a waterfall. It happened just a few years after the king's burial, so the contents of the tomb were moved to another location. That's why there was a second corridor in the tomb. It was most likely made to help remove King Thutmose II's body from his flooded tomb. Despite the damage, the excavation team made some really exciting discoveries. They found traces of mortar decorated with blue inscriptions, yellow stars, and fragments from the Book of Amduat, one of the most significant funerary texts in ancient Egypt. The book was meant to guide the deceased through the underworld, ensuring a safe journey to the afterlife. Now, how about we sneak a peek at ancient Egypt's 18th dynasty? It was all about conquering lands, expanding the empire, and building jaw-dropping monuments. Some of the biggest names from that era, Thutmose I and Thutmose III, both legendary warrior kings who left their mark in history. Thutmose I was a fierce fighter who led major military campaigns, pushing Egypt's border further south than ever before, all the way to the fourth cataract of the Nile. His victories gave Egypt access to new trade routes, stronger political ties, and more wealth. His conquests were so significant that they were recorded in the tombs of his top officials. Thutmose III, sometimes called Thutmose the Great, took things even further. He was not only an incredible military strategist, but also the commander of Pharaoh Hatshepsut's armies before becoming king himself. He led between 17 and 20 military campaigns, winning every single one and expanding Egypt's empire to its peak. He even created the world's first navy. Thutmose III is often remembered as Egypt's greatest warrior pharaoh. And sandwiched between these two powerhouses was Thutmose II, a pharaoh who doesn't get nearly as much attention. Hey, the middle child, right? His reign lasted only about 5 years before he passed away at around age 30 in 1479 BCE. He is kind of a mystery. No one really knows what he accomplished. For the longest time, even the location of his burial site was totally unknown. His body was actually found in the 19th century. It was just lying around in the mortuary temple of Deir el-Bahari, in a secret chamber where priests used to hide royal mummies centuries after their original tombs were looted by grave robbers. In other words, Thutmose II's body must have been moved from his original resting place at some point in history to protect it. During his lifetime, Thutmose II made at least one major impact on Egyptian history. He married his half-sister Hatshepsut. That might not sound like a big deal, but it helped her become Egypt's greatest female pharaoh after he passed. The catch? She kept her stepson, Thutmose III, off the throne for decades. When he finally took power, he erased her name from history out of spite. And still, Hatshepsut is one of Egypt's greatest pharaohs, no matter if you're talking about a man or a woman. She brought a lot of wealth and art to Egypt. She led a big trading trip to a place called Punt, where she brought back things like gold, ebony, and incense. She also made sure her name lasted by building amazing structures that we can still see today. At Karnak, she added huge obelisks. One of them is still standing tall. She also was the one to build the Temple of Deir el-Bahari with its countless columns. She was buried there. Interestingly, Hatshepsut was often shown in art as a man with muscles and a beard, like how pharaohs were usually depicted. But she made sure there was always something in the artwork that reminded people she was a woman, like calling herself Daughter of Re or His Majesty herself. When she passed away in 1458 BCE, Egypt wouldn't have a female ruler as powerful as her until Cleopatra, about 1400 years later. According to Egypt's Supreme Council of Antiquities Secretary General, isn't that a mouthful? Hatshepsut's name actually appears in Thutmose II's tomb, meaning she might have even handled his burial. As for their final resting places, well, Hatshepsut was buried in the Valley of the Kings, and Thutmose II's mummy is now in the National Museum of Egyptian Civilization, alongside other ancient Egyptian rulers. It gives visitors a rare chance to see the remains of a nearly forgotten pharaoh. Now, experts consider the discovery of his tomb to be one of the most significant in recent years. The artifacts found there add important details to our understanding of the history of the region and Thutmose II's rule. And even though the tomb's design is fairly simple and follows the same architectural style preferred by later Egyptian rulers, its historical importance is undeniable. In any case, the mission isn't over yet. Archaeologists are now focusing on solving another mystery. Where did the rest of the tomb's contents end up? The team is determined to continue their search. Who knows what other secrets they will uncover that have remained hidden beneath the sands for thousands of years.
In 1936, British Egyptologist Walter Bryan Emery found a small object in the desert that made people debate whether it was an elaborate stone model of a flying saucer or even a hyperdrive from a spaceship that belonged to some advanced civilization that visited the Earth. Emery spent years excavating sites along the Nile River Valley, especially in the huge ancient necropolis of Saqqara. He found countless treasures from ancient Egypt, and the most bizarre one was definitely from the tomb of a high official, Sabu. Historians don't know exactly who he was for sure, Some sources say he was a king's son. His burial at Saqqara means he was an important figure in the royal court. There are no records from this early period he lived in, so Sabu's role and fate are still a mystery. Inside his tomb, scientists found 7 funerary chambers, each filled with traditional grave goods: animal bones, flint tools, pottery, ivory objects, and stone bowls. And then there was a strange, broken artifact that became famous as the Disc of Sabu. It resembles a shallow, round-bottomed bowl, but with 3 delicately carved, curved lobes spaced roughly 120 degrees apart around its perimeter. These lobes are separated by 3 holes, and at the center, there's a thin tube. The material used to build the disc is metasiltstone, or schist. This type of rock is fragile, highly porous, and super difficult to carve. It flakes easily and crumbles under pressure. So how they made the disc out of it with rather simple stone and copper tools from 3000 BCE is still a mystery. The next big question is why they decided to bury Sabu with it. Perhaps if we knew its true purpose, it would make more sense. When it was first discovered, archaeologists thought it was nothing more than a vase, an incense burner, or a ceremonial decoration. But those who took a closer look from the point of view of an engineer decided it could actually be a component of a larger mechanism. An amateur historian made an exact copy of the artifact with a 3D printer, and it turned out that the Disc of Sabu was an ancient impeller, a crucial part of a centrifugal pump. When they put it in a housing and span at high speeds using the small central shaft, the disc was able to displace water. When it was tested without a housing, the disc created a powerful vortex. It became clear that the curved lobes and slightly concave shape of the disc weren't random. It was probably all engineered to move water with remarkable efficiency, like a powerful pump mechanism. Ancient Egypt's entire civilization depended on irrigation. Later dynasties perfected basin irrigation and managed to control the rise and fall of the Nile to take the most from agriculture. So, the engineers of the first dynasty may have been experimenting with advanced irrigation techniques thousands of years earlier than scientists previously thought. But then again, some people have doubts schist is strong enough to be used for a pumping mechanism. They suggest that artisans from Egypt's first dynasty were trying to recreate an even older object, using whatever tools and materials they had. It could be a stone replica of something originally made from metal, possibly belonging to a civilization far older and more advanced than ancient Egypt itself. One Swiss author takes this idea even further and proposes that the disc is a copy of a component from an extraterrestrial spaceship's hyperdrive, or stone model of a flying saucer. One French researcher believes the Disc of Sabu was part of a secret massive factory system to manufacture sodium carbonate inside pyramids. Some people suggest that the disc may have been a primitive tool for weaving ropes. The lobes held strands of silk or fiber that were twisted into twine when it was spun. Or it may have been a gigantic lamp. Another historical mystery is a map from 1513 that is believed to be the oldest surviving detailed map showing the Americas. The author of the map is a Turkish captain, Piri Reis. He never crossed the ocean himself and put together this map from 20 regional maps. He used an Arab map of India, 4 Portuguese maps showing India and China, and a map of America by Christopher Columbus as he saw it. This last map was lost for many years, so Reis's map gave us an idea of what Columbus must have recorded during his 3rd voyage to the New World. A historian who studied the map suggested that it showed Antarctica in prehistoric times because it strangely resembled Antarctica's true coastline, the way it looked when it was free of ice. But it was later proven that this idea wasn't right. Another idea that rocked the science world was Klerksdorp spheres. They were found in deposits of mineral pyrophyllite in South Africa and looked like tiny ancient cricket balls with lines around the middle. Back in the 1980s, there was a theory that some super advanced pre-flood civilization we know nothing about had made these spheres. One journalist shared stories about how they rotated on their own in a display case. There was also a TV show that invited a psychic who was telling everyone the spheres were pieces of an ancient spaceship. But according to geologists, these spheres are pretty regular spherical objects formed from different minerals than the surrounding rock. The seam-like lines on them are just imprints from the host rock's layers building up over time. The Klerksdorp spheres come in different shapes, from flattened spheres to distinct disks. As for that episode when one of these spheres spun on its own, the curator of the Klerksdorp Museum cleared that up too. He said that when he put one sphere on its glass shelf when the journalist came to visit, the sphere rotated a bit because it's round. There are some gold mining activities going on nearby, so the land where the museum stands often experiences earth tremors. In a remote part of China, there are some bizarre pipe-like formations known as the Beigong Pipes. A local explorer found them back in 1996 protruding from Mount Beigong and along the shores of Tosan Lake nearby. Some people thought they were the work of ancient guests from other planets. When scientists tested samples of the pipe material, they found out that they contained mostly common minerals, but there was a mysterious 8% of unknown stuff. Some extra tests showed that these pipes had been there before humans. Chinese geologists later visited the site and suggested that these pipes were formed naturally over time. It was probably fossilized tree roots from the area's super green past. It's still a real mystery with no clear-cut answer. While digging a trench along a river in Romania, workers found a wedge, which is now famous as the aluminum wedge of Ajud, or the object of Ajud. Right next to it, there were some mastodon bones. Those distant relatives of elephants lived 11,000 years ago. So some people concluded the wedge is of the same age. The cool part is that it's made of aluminum, but this metal wasn't discovered until the 1800s. This material requires serious heat to produce. The wedge is said to be covered in a thick layer of oxide that's been sitting there for hundreds of years. Some folks believe this wedge must have crash-landed here on a spacecraft from some other planet. Some scientists think it's all a hoax, and others suppose it might be a human-made object with an unknown purpose.
Now, history isn't just carved in stone, but these drawings on 11,000-year-old rocks might be warning us about a freaky future. Both the Mayans and the people at Göbekli Tepe made big predictions about humanity's future. What's eerie is that despite being hundreds of miles and years apart, they used similar symbols. Now, let's get one thing straight. Ancient civilizations often depicted their deities as humanoids. You'll find humanoid representations of celestial beings in ancient Egypt, but also in pre-Columbian societies from the Americas. For example, Aztecs had an important deity they called Quetzalcoatl. He was related to the wind, Venus, and the sun. In some ancient Aztec art, he's depicted carrying a tiny handbag. The shocker is that a very similar winged figure was represented by the Assyrians. Now, it's already odd that they chose similar forms to represent their gods, even though these civilizations didn't have any contact with each other. But to draw an almost identical handbag, that seems like a bit of a stretch. Of course, now, when we say handbags, we mean carvings depicting things that look like modern handbags. Not quite Coach or Prada, but you get the idea. Some theories suggest this mysterious handbag could be related to time travel. We've seen that Göbekli Tepe tells of a great flood that destroyed an ancient civilization. But during that civilization's time, they raised cattle and grew food. They knew how to handle seeds and grow crops. According to one theory, this stylish accessory could have been used for carrying seeds. Since Göbekli Tepe is believed to be near where Noah's Ark might have been found, the people of the area could have gathered seeds to plant in the New World after the Great Flood. Strange? Definitely. But so is everything we've been talking about, so let's roll with it. Another theory on the meaning of the handbag has a much more straightforward approach. In multiple ancient cultures, the circle was used to represent spirituality and non-materiality, but the square was often associated with concepts of the earth and materiality. So, what we modern humans understand as a handbag might be an image that symbolizes the reunification of the earth and sky, of the material and non-material elements of existence. Not a bad theory, I would say. But then, who am I? Some researchers, like Graham Hancock, are not convinced with these previous explanations. For him, Göbekli Tepe is all about little gray people and their contacts with ancient earthling civilizations. You see, right in the middle of this ancient site, there's a special pillar called Pillar 43, or Enclosure D. At first glance, it looks like an astronomical calendar. You see the scorpion? That's the Scorpion constellation. And that ball in the center? It's all about the sun's alignment. We know ancient societies like the Maya or Incas were stellar astronomers, so what's the big deal here? Turns out the folks at Göbekli Tepe were talking about a massive natural disaster that wiped out all forms of life before their time. When astronomers recreated the angles and positions from Pillar 43, it showed an astrological setup from over 13,000 years ago. The stone also depicted a tragic event, a mix of a flood and a meteor shower. The headless man? That's humanity's tragic end. And the snake from the ground? Giant waves washing over the earth. And it's not just one stone telling the tale. Pillar 56 shows more of the Younger Dryas event, or as it's called, the terror from the sky. You see animals fleeing and waves crashing as the meteor shower hits. But wait, while Pillar 43 gives us the exact date of the last disaster, Pillar 18 in Enclosure D gives us the date of the next possible wipeout. The art depicted in this pillar zooms in on the constellation of Aquarius. Now, you might have seen the movie The Age of Aquarius or heard some woo-woo theories about how we're entering this phase right now. You see what I'm driving at? Göbekli Tepe might be giving us the date of the next disaster so that we have time to prep for it. These images could be a survival guide for humanity. Or not. Now, this would be bananas if it weren't for one piece of evidence. Let's check the facts. The Encke comet, discovered in 1786, used to be part of a megacomet, 100 miles wide, made of ice, metal, and rock. It broke up and formed a debris field. Now, instead of one huge comet, we've got millions of smaller ones. When the Earth passed through that debris, the folks at Göbekli Tepe saw a firestorm of comets, all coming from the Aquarius constellation, just like on Pillar 43. Now here's the supposed scary part. We pass through that same debris field every year. If you're watching this in September, October, or November, we're flying through it right now. It could happen that these debris fall onto the surface of the Earth all over again, repeating history. But so far, that's just a theory. The mind-boggling question is, how did the people at Göbekli Tepe know about an event that happened before they were all born? In 2019, excavations kicked off at Karahan Tepe, about 40 miles from Göbekli Tepe. But research suggests it might have been settled even earlier. Göbekli Tepe seems to have been a place of worship or an observatory, but Karahan Tepe shows signs of a structured society. Excavations at Karahan Tepe reveal artifacts like intricate carvings, tools, and even possible remnants of buildings. This suggests that these people were not just hunters and gatherers, but had a structured society with spiritual or ceremonial practices. In 2020, researchers started unearthing several other settlements in the area, indicating that Göbekli Tepe was part of a huge metropolis. The whole site is known collectively as Tas Tepler. The thing is, the math around all this has scientists baffled. Around that time, Earth was just leaving its last ice age, and scientists used to think Stone Age civilizations were primitive. But evidence keeps showing up, proving that wasn't the case. For Göbekli Tepe to have existed with that level of tech 12,000 years ago, there must have been an even earlier civilization. That kind of tech doesn't just pop up out of nowhere. And hey, we've got plenty of other proof of advanced societies. Take the Mayans, for example. Recent discoveries have shown they were even more advanced than we previously thought. They built massive cities with roads up to 130 feet wide, painted white to guide travelers at night, a feat you'd expect in places like Portugal or England. These roads, sometimes elevated over swampy ground, formed a network of over 964 settlements, like a giant spider web. A bunch of scientists turned their eyes on this theory, but it could be the connecting point of everything we've been speculating about in this video. After all, the people from the sky could have come down and told the people from Göbekli Tepe about the destruction of a more ancient civilization than theirs. Or not. Remember, don't give up your critical thinking just because you see something on the internet. Anyway, Göbekli Tepe raises suspicions just as Stonehenge and the Great Pyramids of Egypt. When we mix little green aliens into the equation, it explains one way that surreal engineering feats were possible in these sites. But it also underestimates our human ancestors and their thinking abilities. One of the main characteristics of Göbekli Tepe's architecture are the T-shaped pillars. The heaviest of them weigh 20 tons and are around 20 feet. These pillars were erected perfectly, without so much as a dent in them. Sure, that's pretty hard to do without modern machines. But hey, maybe they figured it out and built it after much effort. Now, in case you don't know what I'm talking about, this old pal is supposed to have cracked the secret of the pyramid builders in modern-day America. He used it to build his own castle and other mesmerizing structures. So, hey, I guess we'll have to keep digging to find out the actual facts about it all, huh? No man shall ever find my tomb. That's what, according to rumors, Cleopatra once said. Rumor has it really wasn't about the gender. She wanted no living soul to disturb her, and I think she meant that no human would ever discover the location of her grave. But, surprisingly, it was indeed a woman who was closer than anyone before to finally discovering the Queen's resting place. Meet Kathleen Martinez Berry, a criminal lawyer turned archaeologist. She got so intrigued with Cleopatra's story that she packed her bags and went to Egypt with no official support and even no permission from the authorities. All she had was pure determination to find the Queen's tomb. Now, you could say Kathleen had always been ahead of the game. She skipped grades in school, mastered piano, chess, swimming, and martial arts, and grew up listening to top intellectuals debating in her home. And she even got her law degree at just 19, and archaeology was her side passion. She had never actually been to Egypt, never dug up a single artifact. But her fascination with Cleopatra went all the way back to an argument with her father in 1990. That day, she walked into his library looking for a copy of Antony and Cleopatra by Shakespeare. Her dad, Fausto Martinez, a professor and legal expert, casually called Cleopatra a seductress. Kathleen wasn't having it. She fired back, arguing that history had been totally unfair to Cleopatra. The Romans, she said, wanted to destroy her reputation, and for centuries, people had just believed their version of the story. The debate went on for hours, and in the end, her father admitted maybe he had judged Cleopatra too harshly. That conversation changed everything for Kathleen. From that day on, she read every ancient text she could find, especially Plutarch's account of Cleopatra and Mark Antony. The more she learned, the more convinced she became that Cleopatra wasn't just some queen who fell for the wrong guy. She was a genius, playing a dangerous political game to keep Egypt independent. And the more she read, the more she started thinking, what if everyone had been looking for Cleopatra's tomb in the wrong place? That thought stuck with her. When she was caring for her second child, she earned a master's in archaeology. Multitasking. That reignited an obsession that would take over her life, uncovering the truth about Cleopatra. Even though most experts believe that Cleopatra's tomb, along with the final resting place of 13 other Ptolemaic rulers, lies somewhere beneath modern-day Alexandria, Dr. Martinez has a different idea. She believes Cleopatra was buried at Taposiris Magna, an ancient temple dedicated to Osiris, the Egyptian deity of the afterlife. But she still needed an ancient foundation plate. These plates, about the size of a smartphone, were placed beneath important temple structures and often contained inscriptions explaining when and why the temple was built. If she could find a plate that confirmed the temple was dedicated to Isis, Cleopatra's patron deity, she'd have solid proof that this was the right place to look. Nothing could deter Martinez. She excavated the entire temple site, digging deeper than anyone before her. Her team found coins with Cleopatra's name and face stamped on them. It meant Cleopatra had a direct connection to this site. Then, they uncovered something even more interesting: a tunnel used to bring water to people, leading straight from the temple into the Mediterranean Sea. So, if parts of the temple had already sunken into the water, could Cleopatra's tomb be down there too? Martinez needed proof to convince Egyptian authorities to let her search underwater. And, against all odds, she found the missing foundation plate. On it, the pharaoh offered a large area of Nubia to deity Isis. That was it, the confirmation she needed. The temple was indeed dedicated to Isis, proving her theory wasn't just speculation. If one temple was on land, Martinez suspected the second temple, possibly Cleopatra's tomb, had collapsed into the sea. She needed help from experts in underwater archaeology, so she reached out to Robert Ballard, the guy who discovered the Titanic. With support from the Egyptian authorities, she and her team began exploring the waters off the coast of Alexandria. And what they found was mind-blowing. Underwater, they discovered massive stone structures, some standing 6 to 10 feet tall, right where the coastline would have been thousands of years ago. They also found basalt blocks, the same material used in the statues from the first temple. That meant one thing: those weren't just random rocks. They were the remains of a lost city, buried beneath the sea for centuries. Now, we can only wait and see whether Martinez and her team will be able to unravel one of the greatest mysteries of the past left by the outstanding woman that was Cleopatra. Here's some backstory. After her father, Ptolemy VII, passed away, Egypt's throne went to both Ptolemy VIII and Cleopatra, or so it seemed. Cleopatra, just 18 at the time, allegedly married her 10-year-old brother. Yeah, ancient royalty had some different customs, though there's no solid proof of that. But sibling love didn't last long. Young Ptolemy decided he wanted all the power for himself and tried to push Cleopatra out. Forced to flee the country, she didn't just sit around feeling sorry for herself. She raised an army, ready to march back and take what was hers. That's how, at 21, she was already in the Sinai Desert, leading an army and planning her return to the throne. Now, by that time, Cleopatra had already been locked in a powerful political, and not only political, alliance with Julius Caesar. In June 47 BC, she gave birth to a son, Ptolemy Caesar, better known as Caesarion, who, many believe, was Caesar's child. But that didn't stop her from playing by Egyptian royal rules. And her husband number 2, her other brother, Ptolemy XIV. Yep, despite her ongoing affair with Caesar, Cleopatra married yet another sibling, because, in her world, keeping the throne in the family was the name of the game. Now, marriage aside, Cleopatra's bond with Caesar stayed strong. She even traveled to Rome with Ptolemy XIV for a state visit. But instead of playing the role of a dutiful queen, she stayed in Caesar's private villa by the Tiber River. But after Julius Caesar lost his life in 44 BCE on the Ides of March, Cleopatra's political standing became shaky. To make matters worse, her brother-husband Ptolemy XIV passed away soon after, and some suspect Cleopatra had a hand in it, leaving her as the sole ruler of Egypt. Meanwhile, back in Rome, Mark Antony was rising to power as Caesar's presumed successor. Wanting to size up the Queen of Egypt, he summoned Cleopatra, and she did not disappoint. Sailing into town on a lavish barge dressed as a deity, Cleopatra made quite an entrance. Antony was instantly mesmerized, so much so that he left his third wife back in Rome and followed Cleopatra to Alexandria, where their relationship turned into a full-blown royal affair. The two had 3 children together. Together, they waged war against Caesar's adopted son, Octavian, in a battle for control of the Roman Empire. The last time the queen was seen, she was in her mausoleum, dressed in full royal splendor, diadem on her head, lying on what Plutarch called a golden couch. When Antony and Cleopatra lost at Actium, Octavian's forces marched into Alexandria. Cleopatra apparently knew the end was near, so she locked herself inside her mausoleum, surrounded by gold, silver, pearls, and priceless art. Those were the treasures she threatened to burn rather than let the Romans take them. Antony, meanwhile, wasn't going to let the Romans capture him alive. He wounded himself with his own sword, but before he passed away, he was carried to Cleopatra's side. She held him as he took his last breath in her arms. A little over a week later, Cleopatra made her own choice. Rather than face humiliation as Octavia's prisoner, she ended her life. Legend says it was the bite of a deadly asp, though history isn't quite clear on that. At the time, Cleopatra was only 39. Sounds like a rather full life to me.
Big news! Santa is real, and he looks like this. I know it's not exactly how we pictured the jolly old guy, but a recently discovered tomb might just be the proof we've been waiting for to show that St. Nicholas was real and Turkish. Turns out he wasn't a North Pole native, but a kind-hearted bishop from the 4th century, famous for giving gifts to everyone. The legend says he was a wealthy man born in the ancient city of Patara, modern-day Turkey, who traveled to the countryside to help the poor and the sick. For centuries, though, people couldn't be sure he actually existed. Some historical sources say he was buried in Myra, which is now called Demre, Turkey. Since the 80s, archaeologists have been digging around this area, trying to prove it. And now, their Christmas miracle has finally come true. After digging 6 feet deep in an annex of St. Nicholas's church, they uncovered a mysterious limestone tomb, about 2 meters long. While they're pretty sure this is St. Nick's final resting place, they're still searching for an inscription to confirm its exact age. Now, if we're talking about the fictional Santa Claus, legend says his home is in Lapland, Finland. Back in 2018, archaeologists made an interesting discovery that could finally prove that Santa was real. They were digging at a site called Tiny Aro when they stumbled upon about 200 burial pits. But when they looked inside, there was definitely no sign of Santa. Actually, there were no human skeletons at all, just a bunch of things like pottery and animal bones. So no one really knows what this place was. That was the complete opposite of what happened with a group of archaeologists working in the ancient city of Petra, Jordan. Since 2003, there have been rumors about hidden chambers beneath the famous monument called Al-Khazneh, also known as the Treasury. 21 years later, a team finally decided to dig and uncovered an intact tomb. Inside, they found at least 12 human skeletons and artifacts, estimated to be over 2,000 years old. Hundreds of thousands of tourists travel to Al-Khazneh every year, and most of them probably go there to see the site of the Holy Grail in the movie Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. So, do you want to know the funny part? One of the skeletons in the tomb was clutching a ceramic chalice that looked a lot like the Holy Grail. You probably remember the devastating fire that caused massive damage to Notre Dame in Paris back in 2019. Because of that, the building, originally built between the 12th and 13th centuries, had to be restructured. But archaeologists saw it as a golden opportunity to dig into the site and uncover its hidden secrets. The team was only allowed to dig about 16 inches beneath the floor, but that was enough. As soon as they removed the floor tiles and cleared away a thin layer of dirt, they spotted the top of a lead coffin. Then, they found some limestone sculptures, including life-sized heads and torsos. Altogether, they uncovered over 1,000 fragments of different works of art. Ancient statues have been found in the most random places, including a sewer. In July 2024, Bulgarian archaeologists were checking a Roman sewer in the ancient city of Heraklia Sintika when they found a nearly 7-foot-tall marble statue of Hermes, the Greek messenger deity. This town was completely devastated and abandoned after 2 earthquakes, one in the year 388 and the other in the year 425. But somehow, it didn't destroy this statue. In fact, its head was found in surprisingly good condition. Finding ancient artwork is definitely fascinating, but imagine stumbling upon an entire hidden city in the Amazon rainforest. Using high-tech lasers, researchers uncovered a lost civilization with thousands of structures and a whole network of roads, canals, and houses, all buried beneath the dense jungle. This city was built around 2,500 years ago, in an area located in the shadow of a volcano, which, by the way, could have erupted and destroyed this civilization at some point. It's hard to say exactly how many people lived there, but experts estimate they stayed up there for about 1,000 years. This discovery proves ancient people also had huge, organized cities in the middle of the Amazon. A similar thing happened in Campeche in southern Mexico. An archaeologist was doing some research on the internet when he accidentally discovered a hidden Maya city. This area, now called Valeriana, was huge, about the size of Edinburgh, the capital of Scotland. It had pyramids, sports fields, amphitheaters, and paths connecting different districts. Thanks to satellite images, archaeologists uncovered an entire unknown civilization from the Bronze Age. They were checking out aerial images when they discovered 100 prehistoric settlements in the Pannonian Plain, a region that includes parts of what's now Serbia and Hungary. The people who lived there are now known as the Titsa Site Group, and it looks like they were a pretty well-organized society, skilled at growing food, hunting, and fishing. Google Earth helped a team to uncover a mysterious set of 400 ancient gates in Saudi Arabia. These gates, scattered across the desert, are thought to be from thousands of years ago. They're made of stone and arranged in weird formations that have left archaeologists scratching their heads. I mean, they don't look like they were meant for funerals, and they don't seem like structures where people lived. So, we still have no idea what they are. Technology is really changing archaeology. Thanks to artificial intelligence and, well, a $1 million prize, we've finally been able to decipher part of an unreadable and super damaged ancient scroll. The Herculaneum scrolls were discovered by workers digging up the ancient town of Herculaneum near Pompeii in 1752. But their condition was so bad that, for years, they were considered indecipherable. Thankfully, AI has helped unveil their secrets. Based on the studies so far, experts believe that one of these scrolls was written by a philosopher who valued pleasures, like music and food, above all else. No doubt, Stonehenge in England is one of the most mysterious places on Earth. Some theories even suggest it was built by extraterrestrials. After more than a century of research, archaeologists are still figuring out how it came together. See that big altar in the middle? Turns out it came all the way from Scotland. And that's pretty wild, considering this massive sandstone block weighs over 6 tons, and the people who built Stonehenge more than 4,000 years ago didn't have the luxury of wheels or modern tools. We can find some pretty amazing stuff in the oceans too. In 2013, a mysterious shipwreck was found about 20 feet underwater off the coast of Kenya. At the time, no one knew where it came from, but now, researchers are pretty sure this could be a ship from Vasco da Gama's fleet. You know, the famous Portuguese navigator, best known for being the first to sail from Europe to India by rounding Africa's Cape of Good Hope. If it's confirmed, this shipwreck could be one of the earliest European shipwrecks in the Indian Ocean. Ancient treasures can take many forms, including a bottle. Recently, archaeologists in Norway uncovered a 150-year-old message in a bottle during an excavation of a Viking burial mound. The bottle contained a letter written by Anders Lorange, an archaeologist who worked on the site back in the 1800s, along with his business card and a few coins wrapped in paper. The letter gave some details about the excavation, though it seems Lorange got a few things wrong, like the exact number of Viking shields discovered. At the end of the letter, he wrote a personal note in runic script, "Emma Gade, my girlfriend." So it gave us not only insights into history, but also a peek into his love life.
Have you heard of Göbekli Tepe? It's an ancient site in Turkey that literally made historians rewrite history books. Over 11,000 years ago, a group of prehistoric humans crafted an enigmatic masterpiece that's even older than Stonehenge. Before its discovery, archaeologists believed that people didn't know about iron and weren't good at making pottery. They were sure that settled life only emerged with the need for agriculture. But Göbekli Tepe changed this belief. The place has revealed that it was the temple that paved the way for a settled life, not agriculture. Until this discovery, researchers believed that farming was the catalyst for sedentary living. Meet Professor Schmidt, the guy whose findings changed this theory. He managed to prove that hunter-gatherer communities laid the very foundations of this way of life. Back in the 1960s, other archaeologists visited the area, but they totally missed the mark. While surveying the region, they stumbled upon a hill with scattered limestone slabs and concluded it was just an old burial ground from medieval times. Little did they know that there was so much more to uncover. In 1994, Schmidt embarked on his own survey of prehistoric sites in the area. Surprise! He instantly realized he had discovered something truly extraordinary. Unlike the nearby flat and barren plateaus, Göbekli Tepe had a gently rounded top, rising 50 feet above the surrounding landscape. Funny enough, the translation of this place's name is Potbelly Hill. Schmidt was sure only humans could have made something like this. Those broken limestone pieces that were mistaken for gravestones turned out to be way more exciting. It was like stumbling upon a hidden treasure. The pieces took on a whole new meaning, and Schmidt with his team was about to dive into the secrets waiting beneath the surface. To their surprise, they found no traces of a settlement. No hearths for cooking, no houses, and none of those adorable clay figurines commonly found in nearby sites of similar age. However, they uncovered that those ancient people used tools like stone hammers. So, Schmidt and his team put their heads together and took a wild guess at the age of Göbekli Tepe's stone structures. Their estimation got backed up by some limited carbon dating done right at the site. The ancient vibes of this place were finally starting to make sense. It was like a puzzle slowly coming together. You may think that back then, people didn't have special tools to create something as cool as Göbekli Tepe. Not true. Turns out, these prehistoric folks used flint tools instead of fancy metal chisels. They were also skilled at chipping away softer limestone and crafting pillars right on the spot. Afterward, they carried the pillars a short distance to the summit and placed them upright. Once the stone rings were complete, they covered them with layers of dirt. Over time, they added new rings, and voila! You've got a cool hill to impress people in the future. During their first year of excavation, the team went through 15,000 pieces of animal bones from wild creatures. These people didn't have pet animals or grow their own food. They hunted wild animals for their meals. But things were about to change, because the place had everything they needed to start farming. Scientists say they had wild sheep and wild grains that could be domesticated. And guess what? Just 20 miles away, geneticists found evidence of the world's oldest domesticated strains of wheat at a prehistoric village. These amazing findings have completely changed how we view civilization. In the past, experts believed that people needed to learn how to farm and settle in one place before they could build temples and develop complex societies. But guess what? Schmidt's research flips that idea on its head. He claims that the incredible effort put into constructing these astonishing structures actually set the stage for the development of advanced societies. It means that societal and cultural changes happened before agriculture. Schmidt has this fascinating hypothesis about Göbekli Tepe. He thinks it could have been a special burial site where people left their loved ones. And here's the twist. The burial site was adorned with fancy statues and symbols representing deities from the spiritual realm. The idea that Göbekli Tepe could have served as a sacred place adds another layer of complexity to the whole story. While the site's true purpose may remain elusive, Schmidt's insights invite us to consider the profound interplay between life and the afterlife, and the deep reverence ancient hunter-gatherer societies may have had for their departed ancestors. Now let's talk about the stars of the show, the mesmerizing T-shaped columns that dominate Göbekli Tepe. These mysterious structures range from 10 to 20 feet tall and most likely represent stylized human figures. But one figure stands out from the rest, the three-dimensional lion relief. This depiction really fires up our imagination. Why? Because it hints at the possibility that lions roamed Anatolia during the Neolithic period. These standing stones are arranged in circles and placed in rectangular pits. Each circle has a similar setup. Two big T-shaped pillars in the center, surrounded by slightly smaller ones facing inward. Talk about a stylish arrangement. These towering pillars reach a whopping 16 feet and weigh between 7 and 10 tons. Some pillars are plain and simple, while others are like works of art with intricate carvings. Foxes, scorpions, and vultures come to life, crawling and twisting on the pillars' sides. But it's not just animals depicted on these stones. Some pillars have abstract shapes representing humans, and even small carvings of clothing items. Some of them even have belts. Now, there's one pillar that stands out from the rest like a rock star. This super old stone pillar suggests that a comet crashed into Earth. It happened during a chilly period that lasted about 1,000 years. Previous studies examining Greenland ice cores hinted at this comet theory, but now the carvings at Göbekli Tepe prove it right. The carvings on the pillars are like a historical comic strip. They even show a headless human figure. Researchers fed the images into a computer and discovered their connections to constellations, indicating that this temple might have been an ancient observatory. It's like our ancestors were trying to document this cataclysmic event in their own unique way. Archaeologists have been excavating and researching Göbekli Tepe since the mid-1990s, peeling back layers of history and providing us with a deeper understanding of the intricate relationship between various elements. They have no plans to stop the whole process for another 150 years. Who knows what else they'll find? You see, Göbekli Tepe has been labeled purely as a ritual site with no signs of domestic activities. We were led to believe that the absence of water meant it couldn't support semi-sedentary communities. But scientists believe it's time to shake things up and approach Göbekli Tepe with fresh eyes. It's time to question what we believed before and use new evidence and different ways of thinking. Like, there might have been a group of people living in the area who didn't stay in one place all the time. They moved around a bit but still had their own civilization, living in the area semi-sedentarily. Göbekli Tepe is not just home to a single temple, but an astounding collection of over 20 ancient structures. As archaeologists delve into the depths of this wonder, they are unraveling its unique layout, featuring two prominent focal points at the heart of each establishment, complemented by smaller structures and dividing walls. What's even crazier is that in this area, there are over 200 obelisks, which are narrow tapering monuments.
Back in December 2012, a lot of people were freaking out over the idea that the world might end in some catastrophic event. And it was all thanks to the famous Maya calendar. This ancient way of tracking time had been the subject of endless speculation. But one of its biggest mysteries was definitely an 819-day count found in some versions of the calendar. No one could explain why it was there or how it worked, until recently, when a group of researchers from Cambridge might have finally cracked the code. First things first, how does the Maya calendar work? So the system the Maya civilization used to track days was based on something we now call the calendar round. Think of it like 3 interlocking gears. These are 3 cycles working together. The first is a 365-day solar year, known as Hab. The second is a cycle of 20 names. And the third is a cycle of 13 numbers, which forms a 260-day sacred calendar, called Solkien. Just like we'd say something like December 25th, 2025, they named their days based on how these 3 cycles lined up. For example, here we have the day 3 Manic and the 14th of the month Hop. It takes 52 years for the 3 cycles to align in the same way again. After that, the days start repeating. But this is where things start to get more complicated and mysterious. On some Mayan monuments, we have also found enigmatic inscriptions pointing to the existence of another cycle, the 819-day count. There are about 20 examples of these inscriptions, mostly found in places like Palenque and Yaxchilan in Mexico. So it didn't seem random at all, and this calendar must have been hiding a big secret. Early research showed that the 819-day cycle was represented by one of 4 colors and the cardinal directions associated with them. Black was tied to the west, red to the east, white to the north, and yellow to the south. Researchers also discovered that this period of time could be broken down into 3 smaller cycles: one of 9 days, one of 7 days, and one of 13 days. Multiply them together, and you'd get 819 days. Pretty cool, but why did they do that? This color scheme and the 3 cycles seemed like a basic level of interpretation, and experts were pretty sure its real purpose was still hidden from us. Another thing researchers noticed is that this strange count of days was mostly shown using a Y glyph followed by a number. But in some cases, they also added a glyph representing Kawil. This was a powerful Maya deity often associated with creation and lightning. He was usually symbolized by a torch coming out of his forehead, representing the spark of life. But in the 90s, a study suggested that when Kawil's inscription showed smoke and fire coming from his forehead, it could actually represent the planets Jupiter or Saturn, or maybe even both. Wait, that means that the 819 days count could be linked to both planets in some way. From there, research focused on figuring out what that link might be. The first conclusion is that this calendar might have helped the Maya track the movements of those planets in some way. Then they started noticing something interesting. These cycles could be specifically tied to the synodic periods of Jupiter and Saturn. By synodic periods, we mean the time it takes for a celestial body, like a planet, to return to the same or nearly the same position as seen from Earth. While this possibility was pretty exciting, something didn't quite add up. Each planet moves very differently, and trying to fit multiple planets into an 819-day span just didn't seem to work. In other words, this 4-part color-coded calendar system was simply too short to align perfectly with the synodic periods of the visible planets. So it looks like we're back to square one. This mystery had people scratching their heads for ages, until 2023, when specialists realized they might have been looking at it all wrong. Researchers actually needed to shift their perspective. Instead of seeing this system as 819 days, they needed to consider the number as representing timelines. And this period of time could be just a small part of a much, much bigger calendar. You see, as we said earlier, this cycle seemed to track the period when a planet became visible to people on Earth. To prove that these 819 cycles were timelines, not actual days, researchers needed a planet that could serve as a starting point to back up their theory. In this case, it was Mercury. And there's a pretty simple reason for that. Mercury's synodic period is 117 days, which fits perfectly into the calendar count. I mean, if you take 1819 and divide by 117, you get the number 7. So, Mercury is the only visible planet whose synodic cycle fits neatly into this period as whole numbers. Perfect. Now they had a solid starting point. From there, they needed to expand the calendar by increasing its length to 20 periods of 819 days. Suddenly, a pattern emerges. And just like that, all the synodic cycles of the planets fit perfectly into the system. For example, Saturn's synodic period from 378 days lines up perfectly after 6 819-day cycles. Venus aligns every 5 cycles, Jupiter every 19 cycles, and Mars, which takes the longest, needs 20 cycles. In other words, it takes about 45 years for Mars to align with the synodic periods of all visible planets. So, this is how researchers determined that the ancient civilization wasn't referring to days, but rather to timelines. The Maya astronomers came up with this count as part of a larger calendar system of 20 periods. But then a question comes up. Why was studying the synodic periods so important to the Maya? Well, we don't have super specific answers about this mysterious calendar yet. But what we can say for sure is that the Maya truly believed in the powerful influence of the cosmos on daily life. So maybe they wanted to analyze how the movements of all the visible planets lined up with their other calendars. Of course, this system is just one part of the Maya's amazing and advanced understanding of astrology. And it wasn't just about using astrological cycles for planting and harvesting. They also had crazy specific knowledge, like how to predict solar eclipses. Archaeologists believe the Maya connection to the stars is reflected in the ruins of their world. Take the famous pyramid in the ancient city of Chichen Itza, located in Mexico's Yucatan Peninsula. If you look closely at the base of its staircase, you will see a snake's head carved in stone. But here's the coolest part. During the spring and fall equinoxes, when day and night are exactly the same length, the sun casts sharp, triangular shadows on the staircase. It creates the illusion of a snake slithering down the steps. Another example of how they use their knowledge of astronomy in their temples is in Tikal, Guatemala. Built around year 1 of the Common Era, this pyramid is considered one of the Maya's earliest astronomical complexes. And its alignment and orientation allowed them to track and calculate solstices and equinoxes with incredible precision. The Maya were skilled sky watchers. Just like we have modern-day high-tech observatories with round domes, they had something similar. Meet El Caracol. The name means snail in Spanish and refers to the spiral staircase inside the tower. Built around 906 Common Era, it was the perfect place to observe all the changes in the sky and track the movements of the sun, moon, planets, and stars. Unlike us today, with our telescopes, satellites, and advanced tools, the Maya relied entirely on naked eye observation, and that makes their achievements even more incredible.
A gruesome discovery took place in Egypt some years ago. You want to hear about it? 16 human hands, carefully buried in 4 eerie pits. They didn't look too much like human hands at first, since they were abnormally large, but they were. Weirdly, there were only right hands. No left hands were in sight. It turned out that it points to the practice of an ancient dark ritual. Old Egyptian art and tales talked of a ceremony where warriors would present the right hand of their adversaries as proof of victory and ask for gold in return. Egyptians believed in the afterlife, so cutting off someone's hand meant you cut off their power eternally. Guaranteeing this type of defeat was interesting to the winning party. Here, the fight was between Egyptians versus Hyksos, who lived in what was once known as Canaan. Egypt has always been the center of some history-changing findings, and some time ago, this papyrus was found. If we stretched it open, it would be just a tad bigger than the height of a skyscraper. The world's tiniest skyscraper, which is located in Wichita Falls, Texas. When humans didn't write on their notes app, they wrote on this thing, made from the medulla of a papyrus plant. Around 2,000 years ago, ancient Egyptians wrote something reminiscent of a book where they describe most of their funerary traditions and their visions of the afterlife. It's considered one of the most important texts from ancient Egypt and is still sold in bookstores to this day. This ancient manuscript was unearthed from a chamber located just south of the Pyramid of Djoser, located in Saqqara. Oh yes, Dozier is the oldest pyramid in Egypt and not the Giza pyramids like most people think. So recently, the site of Saqqara buzzed with excited archaeologists who probably found one of Egypt's oldest complete mummies. They believe that this beautiful and well-preserved mummy was that of a wealthy man. He was discovered in a deep shaft, covered in layers of gold leaves. There are many symbols that show he was an important and wealthy man, like the band he wore on his head, the bracelet on his chest, and the fact that he was embalmed with a tunic, which was reserved for Egypt's finest. The most exciting part of the entire discovery was finding the resting place sealed with mortar, just as the ancient Egyptians had left it 4,300 years ago. Now this may sound weird, but back in 2008, archaeologists discovered a missing pyramid. Now it went missing because it deteriorated over the span of 4,000 years. Today, you can only see its base. It was a pretty important site back in ancient times. It is said that around the area of the pyramid, the ancients hosted a special type of ceremony where high priests would carry mummified remains of sacred bulls. Now here's a fun fact. Ancient Egyptians believed that Apis bulls were earthly incarnations of the city deity of Memphis and was connected to rites of fertility. It wasn't just any Apis bull though. They needed to be all black with a single white mark between its horns and a bunch of very specific characteristics. They were selected by the local priests and honored until they passed away. After that, they were mummified and buried in underground galleries. Meanwhile, this missing pyramid sort of disappeared around the 1800s. It was a German archaeologist who first found it in the village of Saqqara. He called it the Headless Pyramid when he first found it. But then, years after the official discovery, the desert sand came along and covered the whole thing. There were some excavations between the 19th and 20th centuries, but they weren't too systematic. That's why scientists were so thrilled when they dug an entire pyramid's base after removing the 25-foot mound of sand that was covering it. Oh, and it turns out American archaeologists are excavating a cemetery in Egypt that could contain over 1 million mummified bodies. So far, archaeologists have dug around 1,700 mummies. One of the main differences from other classic Egyptian mummies is that these people weren't kings and pharaohs. They were commoners that most likely lived about 1,500 years ago, when Egypt was controlled by the Roman and Byzantine empires. The name of the cemetery is cool though, the Way of the Water Buffalo, just in case you want to check it out on your next trip. Other than bulls and buffaloes, ancient Egyptians also liked baboons. Are you seeing a pattern here? In the beginning of the 20th century, archaeologists discovered a site filled with mummified baboons in a place called, guess what? The Valley of Monkeys. An animal wouldn't have been mummified if it wasn't considered important. Certain animals were more important than others, since they were linked to specific deities. Jackals were connected to Anubis, the ancient god of the afterlife, and cats were likened to the female deity Bastet. Baboons were a pretty big deal, since they were believed to be connected to Thoth, the deity of wisdom and advisor to Ra, one of Egypt's supreme deities. The archaeologists who studied these animals weren't too happy. They think these baboons were kept inside and were deprived of sunlight for most of their lives. They had extreme vitamin D deficiencies and they were poorly fed. Maybe Thoth got angry with these baboon keepers. Just a guess. Since there's never a boring day for archaeologists in Egypt, they also found human mummies with golden tongues. Since Egyptians were all about the afterlife, they believed that golden tongues might help a person speak once they pass to the other side. I mean, it's a long shot, but hey, why not? Some of these mummies were placed in wooden coffins with goods, such as necklaces, pottery, golden artifacts in the shape of lotus flowers, and scarab beetles, and iPhones. Just kidding. A new temple was also unearthed recently in Egypt. Scientists believe it was dedicated to honor Zeus Cassios. That deity would be a cross between Zeus, the almighty Greek deity of the sky, and Mount Cassios. While digging around the Sinai Peninsula in Egypt, archaeologists spotted 2 pink granite columns poking out of the ground, and bingo. They believe these columns represented the temple's front gate and collapsed during an earthquake many years ago. And speaking of deities, there weren't only super serious deities. Recently, scientists unearthed a golden ring in a city south of Cairo. No, Frodo, it's not magical. It was a normal gold ring, but it had the depiction of the deity of fun, officially named Bes. This deity is often described in sacred texts as a happy chubby dwarf. Today, many tattoos we get are sorta deprived of any sense and are made of aesthetic purposes only. In ancient Egypt, though, women would get tattoos as a token of protection for childbirth. That's what scientists think, at least. Around the Nile region, scientists found some mummies that had well-preserved tattoos, which is a rarity since the skin deteriorates so easily. 2 of these women tattooed their lower backs, and the drawings were simple. They were mostly pictures, including that same chubby dwarf we just talked about, Bes. He also had a side hustle as the protector of women during childbirth. Now, would you believe me if I told you ancient Egyptians invented robots? No? Well, that's because that's not entirely true. Sure, they were astronomers, mathematicians, and engineers, and somehow they also squeezed an eccentric invention into that package – an automated deity some scientists called Hathor. This wooden statue had been in the Metropolitan Museum of Art for years before someone noticed its secret. With the help of an X-ray machine, specialists discovered a mechanical operating system inside it. The pulley-like axis goes from the statue's shoulder to her left leg. When the system